Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we have a bit of a different video for you today. So this is kind of another one of our list videos, and for anyone who isn't from the UK, we are still in lockdown in the UK, and we're still whiling away the hours, watching TV shows, watching films, and we wanted to share another list of things that you can watch. So today we are going to be going through our 20 unique films to watch during lockdown. These are films, we've kind of been fast and loose with the term unique on this one. So some of these will be unique films, some will be overlooked films, some will be like films that maybe are really good and not talked about all that much. So we've got 5 random picks each. And as you can see, we have a full house today, including Tom, who we haven't seen in so long. So this is like a reunion for us as well on the channel. So it's awesome to have you on this one, Tom. But before we go into it, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So, as we always say, we want you guys to comment along with us. Do that across the stream. We don't have a little card for this because it's too many words to put. So, do comment, do like, and of course, subscribe if you like this video. If you like what we're doing, that's the best way to follow us. And if you want to find out when we're going to be doing our next videos, that is to get us on social media. So, Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. We announce things like this a couple of days in advance, maybe on the day. We've had some videos where we do it like that. So best way to find out when we're going to be live is getting us on those social medias. And then for the actual videos, obviously subscribe to us on YouTube and hit the notification, and it will beep to your phone when we are live. That being said, this is something very different today. As Chris said, we've picked loose terms. We've got things very different. We've got all genres, all types of films across multiple budgets. So we don't really know how this is going to play out, because this is probably one of the most unique videos I guess we've even done on the channel without referencing the title.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we don't really have any kind of order to this thing. We've kind of just lumped 5 different ones together. As we've said, these will be across all different genres, all different types of films. So hopefully it'll give you guys plenty of options at home. If you haven't watched any of these, to go and check them out, because we think they're films or even documentaries. I think we have some TV on there too, some documentary films. They're all worth watching in some way. So with all that being said, we've got 20 picks to get through, so I think we should hit the ground running and go through it now. So I believe the order we're going in is a clockwise manner. So me, George, Tate, and Tom. We'll have a little bit of commentary on the films as well. So I will say all 5 of my picks are just feature films that you can watch. So my first pick that I'm going to shout out is Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, which actually, Tom, I believe that you're a big fan of this film, and I actually think that you were the one who first showed me this film many, many years ago now. So when I was coming to do my list, I was torn between 2 Aronofsky films. I never picked Requiem for a Dream because it's one of the most depressing films ever. It is unique, but it's very depressing. And I was tempted to pick Mother! Which is also a very
picked it for the memes. Should have
picked it for the memes, but I wanted to convert expectations, and I went with The Fountain. It's a 2006 film. How do you even begin to describe this film, to even pitch this film, what it's about? So it stars Hugh Jackman, and it's almost like a Cloud Atlas style movie where it's quite an artsy movie. It's quite out there in terms of, its substance and its takeaway and how you can dissect it. And it's sort of going through many different stages, some set in the far future, some set in the past, and some set in present day. And the core of it, everything that ties it, is this tree and Hugh Jackman's character, and it's how you have all these different permutations of the same character, the same person throughout all different strands of life, and how there are thematic signifiers, and how some things can bleed into one lifetime, and how I can't really describe this. It's been a while since I've watched this film. It's very much like Cloud Atlas, how you have all these events sort of tied together through some kind of string of consciousness or whatever. It's a very emotional film. I love the soundtrack as well. Clint Mansell's score to this film is just absolutely outstanding, and just it does have an impact on you. It's one of those that does leave you thinking, and it's a film that does stay with you in that way. And I actually do think it benefits from multiple viewings as well, because you can pick up on certain things that maybe you missed the first time, different visual links to certain things. And it's just a beautiful movie as well. The cinematography coupled with the score is just absolutely outstanding. So, and it's often an overlooked Aronofsky film in his filmography. I don't really see many people talking about this film, and I do think that is a film that deserves to be checked out and talked about. As you can find it on there as well. It is streaming on Prime Video, so this is readily available. So I would recommend everyone check it out if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, I've not actually even heard of the film until today. I think we
There
might
you go.
say to a couple of
Yeah.
people.
You not?
I think no, I haven't. I've seen the odd Aronofsky film. I think it's Black Swan Aronofsky, and that's maybe the only one I've seen. I didn't watch his Noah's Ark one.
Oh,
But
yeah,
no,
I still haven't watched that one yet.
but no, it's not one I'm familiar with.
I remember. Go for it. You go for it.
I was just going to say one thing to sort of know, and it's probably one of Aronofsky's best and very underrated. So it's a man's obsession going through, lifetimes obsession with saving, either the country that he loves in Spain and the Queen, which is represented by Rachel Weisz, or the embodiment of her spirit in the future, which is the tree he tries to save in the very far future. As you said, Chris, the score is fantastic and easily, probably, I would say, one of the best there is. Personally,
it's quite an understated score, but when it really works for the film. It's a beautiful film.
It's funny because it's Hugh Jackman's second film where he plays a character that is obsessed with something. The other one came out the same year, which was The Prestige. Mm-hmm. He's completely obsessed with magic, but in a different sort of way. Maybe he was going through a weird obsession phase.
Maybe.
I mean, for me, the thing that I remember most about this film is the cinematography and just the stunning visuals that it gives you. I've seen it once, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, thinking back on it now, just the mentioning of the film, I can just picture just the setting and the different visuals that the film gave me and kind of the experience that it had. But if you want a second suggestion, also go watch Mother if you don't want to watch this film. Okay,
Definitely.
Tom, you're up next.
Oh no, clockwise.
George, you're up next.
No. So, off the back of that emotional one, I'm going to throw in some old school wrestling for you all. I am recommending a documentary called Beyond the Mat. Now, I haven't watched wrestling in about 3 years, and this was one of my main things to watch for years. Attended loads of events, massive on it, and I saw this for the first time, I want to say a year or two ago, and it's incredible. So and I rewatched actually like 1 a.m. today. This came out in 1999, and if you don't know anything about wrestling, this is a perfect documentary because this isn't about what people know and taking you into it. This is how are people obsessed with this and how do these people go through this. It's a really good direction. And the person that directed, I apologize, I've forgotten his name. He grew up as a wrestling fan. And in 1999, you weren't allowed to say you were a wrestling fan if you're over the age of 12. And what's incredible is that looking at this 20 plus years later, the late 90s is probably the peak of wrestling. All those faces on the poster, Mick Foley, Terry Funk, The Rock, they were household names then. They're still household names today for wrestling fans. Obviously, The Rock is a superstar in action. It's an incredible step into the insight of it all because they somehow got permission of Vince McMahon to do this. And Vince McMahon does not normally let anyone look at any behind-the-scenes stuff that hasn't been ticked off by WWE or that shows the reality of it. They've got up-and-coming wrestlers coming through, and they've got these stories of these legends, and it all accumulates following their families. And it doesn't just follow WWE. You get, if anyone's heard of something called ECW, this documentary covers their first ever pay-per-view event, which is remarkable because if you know anything about wrestling, you'll know that they went on to become the biggest independent wrestling company that eventually got bought out by WWE. So it's a really fascinating documentary to watch. And I think things like this, it's that time capsule into the late 90s. I just thought it's worth recommending because it's not everyone's cup of tea. But when you're hearing these behind-the-scenes stories from the guys, there's one of them, if anyone's heard of Jake the Snake Roberts, I believe he's actually in another film we might talk about later on. He, quite honest to Cameron, he said that his dad raped his mom when she was 13, had him, and had his sister. And his sister was murdered. She was kidnapped, abducted, murdered by someone because she was with someone 35 years older than her. And you're getting all this deep personal stuff following them and their families that has never been released to the public before. It wasn't common knowledge. And it's quite heartbreaking watching some of this. You've got, if I bring it back up, you might recognize Mick Foley on the far left. That his 6-year-old daughter's a star in this because she thinks it's real. Obviously, we know it's scripted. And it's got a famous match at the end with The Rock and Mick Foley where it's like one of the bloodiest matches in history. The pair of them said they went too far. and the entire documentary is focusing on his 6-year-old daughter screaming and crying, thinking her dad's died, and she's row one ringside. And I think it's a fascinating documentary on Netflix. That kind of late night one you can put on in the background, and you get like an insight into the sort of how it became what it did and how these people somehow go through it.
Yeah, no, I mean, back in the day, I was a huge wrestling fan. I did kind of drop off right around the time, not too many years into when WWF changed to WWE, I remember. Basically, I can chalk it to the point where Kane took his mask off, and that's kind of where I lost it for the first time. That's where I lost interest with it. But no, I was a huge wrestling fan. I used to watch all the Royal Rumbles on videos that were released annually, and some of the other VHSs that came out with some compilations of matches on there. I loved it, and I recognize all the people in that photo as well. So that sounds like my kind of generation with the wrestling. So I didn't even know that was on Netflix, so that's news to me. So I always say that I don't watch documentaries, not for any particular reason. I tend to watch more films than I do documentaries, but that sounds like it's definitely my kind of thing, and especially that behind-the-scenes information, which I wasn't aware of, and I'm guessing a lot of people weren't aware of who haven't seen that because it's kept so close to the chest. But yeah, no, that definitely sounds like one to check out.
I've never been a fan of wrestling. There is a film on this list that we have today, which isn't even my pick, which I have seen, to do with the subject. That isn't really spoiling it, but people can start making guesses. But it has always intrigued me with the behind the scenes of things like this. I remember watching like a short documentary on the behind the scenes of the Gladiators, and I always kind of thought it was a very similar kind of. I know this is going really weird off topic, but I always remember it being kind of the same kind of vibe. Like they all have their own characters, they all have their own kind of backstories, and they all have their issues from behind kind of the screen and stuff like that. So I feel like maybe this one isn't for me, but I can see the appeal for other people.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's not one I've seen, but I will definitely check it out, especially after something I think later on. Yeah, it's really. I mean, this is sort of it's sort of off topic, but it's funny how many people still say that wrestling is it's all fake. Well, yeah, but that's the point.
That's the point.
That's the
it's entertainment.
Exactly, and stuff like this, I'm sure will if you show it to anyone that says that, will go okay, and I'll definitely give it a try. Maybe tonight, actually.
Well, it's an interesting angle with it's Mankind, isn't it? That's Mick Foley.
Yeah,
I don't know, it was Mankind with the mask. Yeah, that angle at the end where you say like his daughter's watching. I mean, it's real to her because she's so small and she doesn't know anything. So that's quite a kind of like horrific side to it as well. Sort of like what it must have been doing to her to see her dad in that situation.
Yeah, I'll sort of close off with a final thing. There's another story where, again, Vince McMahon keeps things very tight-chested. Shows him creating a character with a new guy, like the usual ex-NFL, didn't make it past college. He comes in and, I'm going to make you a superstar. And he's like, I heard that you can regurgitate on command. The guy's like, yeah. Vince McMahon, I'm going to call you, if anyone knows Vince McMahon, you know how he does those long pronunciations. Because I'm going to call you Puke, like the Vince McMahon puke. And the guy, he's like regurgitating the can now, and Vince McMahon like shoves a bin in his face, and like he just starts regurgitating, and it's really fascinating seeing this character creation. And then the final thing happens because I hadn't heard of him. I was like, why haven't I heard of this guy? What do the credits say? Puke obviously went on to become a different character, and after a failed wrestling move, less than a year in, he's been quadriplegic for 21 years. And it is that harping that reality of it home that it's not. It's scripted, but stuff goes wrong, and they are still athletes in their build and what they have to do and what they go through. I think it's just showing how hard it can hit. And other characters, I didn't grow up with my daughter because I was contractually obligated to perform every day or I didn't get paid. Things like that. So it's definitely worth a watch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last year there was a film that came out, or was it the year before? I'm starting to lose track of time. I believe it was the year before. Which we're all quite excited about watching, which was called Uncut Gems by the Safdie brothers. And the reason why we were so excited to watch this was because a few years before then, they made the film Good Time. Now, Good Time is streamed on Netflix, and it is also, Uncut Gems is also streamed on Netflix if you wanted to watch that. This film put these guys on the map. This is a film which stars Robert Pattinson. He is a kind of a jewelry heister or something like that. Bank robbery, sorry. a bank robbery goes wrong, and his brother, who has mental disabilities, ends up being caught by the police, and it's suddenly a race against time for him to try and save his brother, break him out, or try and get him the help that he needs. And you're put into this character's shoes and shown the underworld of New York City and the different things that he has to do to make sure that his brother is safe because of the situation that he's got him in. And it is just a fast-paced, really well written, really well acted, beautifully shot. I can't remember the name of the director, but the person who directed Drive, it feels like that kind of neon setting, that very dark kind of almost noir twist to it that keeps the ball rolling. And it's just a fantastic watching experience. It's one of those films where you're always on the edge of your seat. And I'm intrigued to hear what you guys think of it, because I think possibly George has seen it and maybe Tom as well.
I saw it last year, yeah. Uncut Gems had this hype that I hadn't seen any Sad People Brother stuff. We got it late in the UK as usual. Everyone was going crazy for it. And loads of my friends told me to watch Good Time, said I'd really like it. I've been on the Pattinson Renaissance before. It was popular before Batman. I think most people that know film knew way before he was cast as Batman that he's actually doing stuff now. And I think Good Time is the one that cemented it to a lot of big directors and to not even general public, but I think if people saw Good Time, they were in. And I remember, I think it's Oscar night. Every year at the Oscars, I famously watched one film in the night before because it starts at like 2 a.m. One year I made the fatal mistake of picking La La Land, not Moonlight, because that was the only film I saw that year.
What a great mistake that was.
It didn't win. So it was even more of a waste of time. But I remember last year I was like, "Oh, I've already seen all the films. Like, what do I want to rewatch?" I was like, "No, I'm gonna watch Good Time." And I remember the film starts and it goes like that. The pacing is perfect. It's almost an evening with like you start with them. There's no long drawn out process. Everything happens in the space of a night, and it's just a weird adrenaline rush. And I think this is much better than Uncut Gems. I think Adam Sandler is better than Rob Pattinson, though. However, this film was phenomenal, and I thought it was fascinating. There were twists, turns, but there was just a certain, I hate the word, vibe about it that made it quite really cool. And yeah, it's a film that I've not gone back to yet, but it's one that I do recommend to everyone as well.
So I have seen Uncut Gems, and I think, when that film came out, everyone was remarking on the director's previous work, saying how Uncut Gems is similar in terms of, you talked about that adrenaline rush, how it's edited, the pace of it, and how it makes you almost anxious as you're watching it as well. And I did get that from Uncut Gems, and I really do. I kind of want to go back to that film. I only watched it the once when it came out, but I really wanted to go back to that. But having this recommended as well, maybe I should go back and check out some of his previous work before going back to Uncut Gems. But if it's the same kind of style to it, I think I'd probably appreciate it.
Very similar kind of style. I've seen Uncut Gems now twice, and I've seen this film twice, and both of them give off that same kind of, like, you feel pressure on your chest whilst watching it. You feel like you're actually there. And not many films are able to create that kind of tension. But it throws you in so fast and so quick. If you miss the first 5 minutes of the film, you are going to be lost for the rest of it. That's all I can say.
If so, it's interesting because you say Robert Pattinson's sort of really good in it, because people don't realise that he is a very, very talented actor. Twilight aside, is very, very capable and very good. But it seems like we're only just seeing that sort of side with him in recent years. And if you say he's as good in this as he is in other stuff he's been in recently, then it's definitely something I'm gonna check out.
It's like there's a thing on Pattinson. It's like the Seinfeld curse. That's what we used to call it, didn't it? Like originated all of this sort of thing. That when you're on this big thing for X amount of years, and it's one of the biggest things in the world, to be able to be seen as someone else other than that person is a massive jump. And even now, Kristen Stewart, she's playing Diana. They've released a photo the other day. You would not think that's Kristen Stewart in a million years. It's so much like her. It's
that's not Kristen Stewart. That's not Kristen Stewart. That's Kirsten Dunst.
I thought Kristen Stewart's playing Diana, and it's the new Neon film. It's the new Princess Diana film.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it is Kristen Stewart. Yeah, sorry, that's my mistake.
Yeah.
No. Are you? Oh.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
And I think it's the same. She's won acting awards elsewhere, and I think Good Time's been that jump. And obviously, not to say Tenet being the easy one, but he's had Tenet. He's going to have Batman, and I think he's fully shook off Twilight now, and he's always going to like it. It's helped push him to where he is, and it has that. But now he's been able to do these other roles, like being seen as is it Edward Cullen? It's been so long since I've seen one of them.
Yeah,
it's a big one.
I mean, it's a shame that other people, namely, the guys from Harry Potter, haven't been able to really shake off that the same way that Pattinson has for Twilight. Apart from I've drawn a blank. Not Daniel Radcliffe, not Rupert Grint.
Emma Watson.
Yeah. She's been able to sort of shake that off a little bit, sort of.
It's like when you see her in Beauty and the Beast, I'm like, go back to Harry Potter for the love of God, please go. Horrible auto-tune, go back.
I mean, Daniel Radcliffe had Swiss Army Man, and I know Guns Akimbo wasn't watched by many, but it was actually quite an entertaining film.
He did that horror, didn't he?
Yeah, Woman in Black. Yeah. Rupert Grint's done nothing.
Sort of the point is I'm sort of trying to get at is that it's sort of not as pronounced, I'd say, as Robert Pattinson, at the moment.
And he was a Harry Potter person. He was Cedric Diggory before he was Edward Cullen.
Yeah,
that's true. He was really good in that as well. I thought he was really good in Goblet of Fire. Right, moving on to my next pick. Oh my God!
Tom's.
No, it's Tom's.
My God, sorry, Tom. Sorry, I'm losing track. Go for it. I'm going to have a sip of water. You continue. You crack on.
Okay. My first pick is a Mike Leigh directed film streaming on Amazon Prime called Peterloo, and a brief bit of history around Peterloo. So Peterloo is based on the Peterloo massacre that took place in St. Petersfield in Manchester, where around 18 people died when sort of cavalry charged into a group of 60,000 so they're protesting about or at least wanting to get parliamentary reform. So it's about the story, the events leading up to that, and then the calamity that is the massacre itself. Mike Leigh is a very interesting director. His films are very politically motivated, and this one is very similar, it is in that regard. One thing I will say is I do feel it is a bit too long. It's about 2.25 hours, roughly. So it does drag on a little bit, and that there are lot of long-winded speeches about political reform, about working classes rising up and stuff like that. But it's better than the sum of its parts. So you get to the very end, and the massacre itself is brutal, and it's very interesting watch. Like I said, there are certain problems with it that I have, but as a whole, it is very brutal and very, it shows you what life was like in 1812 or something like that. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's very good, despite my couple of misgivings about it.
I haven't even heard of this one until now, so this is completely new to me. But I do sort of like my sort of like period films and everything like that, and especially if it goes into the like the horrors of what happened and it doesn't pull any punches when it shows that on screen. I could imagine that being really impactful. Would you say it kind of, if you don't know anything about it, does it sort of cater, not dumb it down, but does it help explain sort of the situation of the time?
Yeah, it does, and it gives you a perspective from sort of the working classes as well, from that period. One thing to say as well, it does have Rory Kinnear in it, and he is very good in this. So he plays the main speaker at this big rally, and yeah, he's one of the standout performances. Also, that's something else to mention. Some of the characters do sort of blend into one, and you kind of forget who's who, but it sort of takes you up to a point where the massacre itself is particularly good. Good in the sense that it's well shot, not that I'm advocating. But...
Whoa. I have heard of this film. I saw it advertised. I think when it first came out, but I didn't. I don't know. I just didn't pique my interest at the time. But I'm tempted to give it a watch. I mean, I'm tempted to give everything from this list a watch today, as the people should do if they're bored at home themselves.
Absolutely.
I've not seen it. I've heard of it via means, but I don't think I've even seen a Mike Leigh film. I always get him mixed up with Ben Wheatley. I don't know why. I think it's
I've
because
seen Mr. Turner, because that had Timothy Spaulding, and that was very good. That's the only film I could name of his.
Okay, is it my pick now? I'm not jumping the gun now, am I? It is officially
You're
my
not
pick.
jumping the gun. It is your pick.
Okay, right. Let's wind the clocks back. Okay, right. Check out this poster. I mean, this says it all right now. Look at that. This is Last Action Hero, starring the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now,
It looks nothing like Arnie.
it looks look at those biceps. If you've seen Predator, you know those biceps. That's all I can say.
I'm talking about the face.
Now, unfortunately, I don't think this film is available anywhere in terms of streaming as of yet. But it should be dead cheap if you're looking for it, or just, find it for whatever means you do. And that's all I'm going to say. This film was directed by John McTiernan. He was the director of Predator, of Die Hard, of The Hunt for Red October. So he's no stranger to his action films. Now, I think this film was way ahead of its time. This came out in 1993, and I think it mostly got negative reviews when it came out. What it is, it's a deconstruction and a pastiche on action films specifically of the 80s, but also into the 90s as well. Now, on our retro reviews, we've been going through a lot of 80s action films recently. Me and you, George, we have a soft spot in our heart for films like that, and they're a lot of fun. Now, I'm assuming audiences of the time, action films did become almost like a parody of themselves afterwards in terms of all the tropes that go with an action film. Tropes that I love for that specific reason, but this was almost like a poking fun at that, but also sort of championing that and saying, action films are great for that reason. The story is about a kid who's a big action film fan, and he gets a magical ticket which transports him into the world of his favorite action star, which is Detective Jack Slater, who is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's just brilliant. Some of the spoofs and parodies of action films, things just randomly explode, like a guy will just like smack into a car and the car will explode. It's like, well, of course there's got to be explosions in an action film. There's so many cameos in this from people who were around in the 80s and the 90s as well. You have Robert Patrick, who will just be in like in a cop's outfit, like the T-1000, just walking past the camera. You've got Sharon Stone in there. Danny DeVito. This is quite one of the weirdest moments in the film. Danny DeVito plays the voice of an animated cat cop who just blends in with the rest of the cops, and no one pokes fun at it. I guess it's kind of like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of thing in there. But the best thing, and this is worth the price of admission alone, or if you buy the DVD, you get to see it's like an alternate world where Sylvester Stallone played the Terminator. And there's a cardboard cutout, I believe in a video store, of Stallone in the leathers, in the shades, with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And just seeing that is surreal. There's some great one-liners in there as well, not to mention a fantastic performance from the ever-great Charles Dance as the main villain of the film, who plays this very cartoony, almost Bond-like villain. It's just a lot of fun. And, at the time, everyone was really negative on it, but I think what it was doing was actually very smart and was very outside the box of deconstruction of the action genre. If you love those action films of the 80s into the 90s, I think there's a lot to like with this one. It's just a really entertaining watch. So Last Action Hero for my pick. It's brilliant.
This is one of the Arnie films I've not seen, but it always fascinates me because any John McTiernan film is worth discussing, not just for the films, but for the real life story, where he is currently still under home arrest, I believe, and he's been prison stuff for lying to the FBI. It's amazing how amazing he was at writing and directing action films, and he ended up getting caught for something an action villain would do, and he was caught badly. He was wiretapping the producers of his films. He was caught hiring private investigators. That being said, anything of Arnie is a watch. Anything of a poster that's spectacular, which I am going to bring up once more, is worth talking about. It looked that good. I had to put the title card underneath. That's like, it's one that, just off the back of that poster, it looks perfect. It's one I'm not seeing. I'd really like to watch actually, so I actually might pick that this week.
And if you want to see William Shakespeare's Hamlet starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, again, this is the film for you. In arguably the best scene of the film for me. So good.
I'm in the same boat as George. It's a film that's always intrigued me, but I've never got around to watching it. So thank you for suggesting it, because now I have the time to.
Will you watch it though, Tate? That's the question.
That's another good question.
I suppose this is peak McTiernan though, isn't it? Really, 'cause, off the back of Die Hard and things like that, it's sort of he has peaked with this, and he's very good at what he does, and I think he sort of this is or the start was with Die Hard, where he deconstructed the action hero. And now he's escalated, or at least escalated in 1993 to the genre as a whole, and it's fantastic.
So, with that being said, I'm going to move on to one of my next picks. This is a British crime film. I don't know if anyone here has actually seen, but I'm actually really excited to talk about. This is called Sexy Beasts, starring the one and only Ray Winstone as well as Ben Kingsley. This is a film that, as many people have when you were studying, whether it was uni or college, you got a list of films at the start of these, like, we're going to watch, like, what on earth is this Sexy Beast? And I saw the poster, I was like, I'm in. This is one of the best British... People hype up the British gangster genre so much just because of the odd, Snatch, I forgot the director's name. You get the odd British gangster... Guy Ritchie, that says, Guy Ritchie did this and this. I know, like, no one's talking about Sexy Beast, which is the best of all of them. It's basically Ray Winstone. He's like moved away. You see that sunburn. Sorry, he's been an ex-thief. He's done his stuff over there, but he's going to come back for one last job. Bring in Ben Kingsley, the guy that organised it. I believe he was nominated for a BAFTA for this film as well. Not sure if it was Oscar as well, but if you thought Trevor Slattery was funny, maybe this is why I like Iron Man 3. Because he is basically playing Trevor Slattery with swear words. He's incredible. It's moving. You like both of these characters, and you want to see the heist come off well. Ian McShane is playing the big bad of it again. You want the sort of the bad British stuff. You've got him in the game, and it's just fascinating to watch. I think it was late 90s, but what this also has is one of the best soundtracks I've heard on a film. The music choices are perfect. They're catchy. They stick in your head. I've got a Spotify playlist with them in, but as far as a gangster film goes, this is a genuine one. This is a different one as well, because it's not something many people talk about, and it's one I recommend for everyone.
I have heard of this film. My dad's recommended it to me a bunch of times, and the one point that he recommends it to me on is that Ben Kingsley is a scary character. The kind of character you just would not want to deal with, and probably the scariest gangster character ever put to film. It's always been kind of in the back of my mind to watch. So possibly one for the future.
Tom, have you heard of this one? Tom, have you heard of this one?
Yeah, it's one I've been meaning to watch. The fact that I like Ray Winstone. He has sort of become a parody of himself in recent years, but going back to sort of that period, he was in some really good stuff, and is quite capable at playing a certain role, but capable nonetheless. And I'll be very intrigued to see if that's still the case with this.
Yeah, and also I'd say with Ray Winstone, it is that Bet365 Paddy Power. He became the tough man, a bit like a Vinnie Jones, isn't it?
Vinnie Jones, yeah.
We see your face, and we kind of really don't actually want to watch your stuff anymore because of that, because of those adverts. And this is Ray Winstone. This and Nil by Mouth, which is a Gary Oldman one, which I almost put down. They're both phenomenal. It's that late 90s British sort of, these are not tough people, not acting tough, because Snatch to me is more of a parody on the British gangster films, whereas this is a genuine one.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those where I've seen the name, I've heard it mentioned a bunch of times, but it's one, surprisingly, again, I haven't got round to watching. But I do love Ben Kingsley. I mean, that is really an actor that can do, or Sir Ben Kingsley, sorry, who's an actor who can basically do anything, any genre, any character you can throw at him. Even a horribly out of place character in Iron Man 3, he can act it as well as what he's given. So I'm still not bitter about the whole Mandarin thing from Iron Man 3. Moving on anyway, but no, this is one that definitely sounds like my kind of film. And just to see those two play off each other, I think that'd be quite an interesting pairing as well.
It's my pick again. I'm going to bring the mood down a little bit because sadly this film is a little bit depressing. But sometimes you need a film like this because it's so fantastically done, it's so fantastically acted, and that is Blue Valentine. It's a love story, see? It says it there, so it'd be great to watch as a couple. Do not watch this film as a couple. This the worst date night film you could possibly pick. This film
That's talking
depicts.
from experience, Tayte.
That sounds like semi-autobiographical at this point.
This film depicts two different points of a relationship and basically shows them simultaneously. So they'll show a couple of scenes from the start of their relationship when they're meeting all the way up until they get married. And then the second things that they could show you is them arguing, them fighting, and them getting a divorce. And that's how the film ends. And that isn't really a spoiler because they advertise that from the very start. The film ends with them getting married and them getting divorced at the same time in the same time frame. And it's an amazing emotional journey that you can see how sometimes in a relationship, arguments can turn into something quite fun, which you see early on in the film. But on the other end of the spectrum, the arguments can get out of control and some hurtful words can be said between them. And it's an interesting perspective seen in a relationship. And the best way of describing it is there's one scene in 500 Days of Summer where it is reality versus expectation. And this is that film put together where you get to see both the reality and the expectation at the same time. I would highly recommend it, but please do not watch it as a date night film. It would be very depressing if that was the case.
This sounds like one of those La La Land type endings where it's like expectations, reality, 500 Days of Summer, whatever you want to call it.
It's Ryan Gosling. So
oh, okay. Well, you know,
it's Michelle Williams, Ryan Gosling, and in the relationship, they are a fantastic couple, and at the same time, they are a horrific couple. And it's brilliant to see those two different dynamics and seeing how some things go right and some things go wrong, and seeing those two different parts of the timeline.
This sounds like one of those bittersweet romance films we love so much, doesn't it, Tayte? No, I haven't heard of this one again, so it goes onto the proverbial list. Although Ryan Gosling, he's a bit of a wet blanket, I must admit, as an actor.
I don't know. This film has two scenes that stick out to me: the ukulele scene and the ending. So watch it for either of those. I'm not going to spoil either of them, but
okay.
Yeah.
I've not seen it. I remember seeing a trailer. You know when you've watched a DVD loads and you always forget which DVD it is, but you always get obviously the same trailers because it's a DVD. And Blue Valentine is a trailer on a film I watched many times when I was younger, and I definitely upgraded to Blu-ray, and I was so thankful that it'd gone because I was sick and fed up with the same trailers. And it's killing me because I've forgotten what film it was now. But it's one I've heard about. Does he play a guitar in it as well? I feel as if that's the thing. I remember seeing like photos that Doorstep one's one of them, and yeah. It's. I like Ryan Gosling, but there's some of his films I've stayed away from. Like, I've not seen The Notebook or this being two prime examples, and I have unfortunately seen La La Land and First Man.
Well, to put it into perspective, as far as the film's concerned, this is a lot darker than his other performances and stuff like that. Because you see two very different sides to each of the characters between Ryan Gosling and what's her face, Michelle Williams. Like, they play basically two different characters in the film: the character where they're loving each other and the characters where they hate each other to the point where they can't see each other anymore. And seeing that evolution within the film, it's a different performance from both of them that I don't think you'd see in any of the other films they've done.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine from what you've said, Tayte, on a date night, people forgetting which film. Oh, do you want to watch that Ryan Gosling film? Oh yeah. Instead of putting the Notebook on.
Oh, it's got the word Valentine in the title. Oh, and it says a love story on it. Yeah, sure. Let's go watch that film.
Or you accidentally put Blue Velvet in for Dennis Hopper just inhaling laughing gas. That's the whole thing. Yeah. On to your pick then, Tom.
Well, I'm going to lift the mood up a little bit.
Go for it.
I have one of the best comedies about Star Trek, and that is Galaxy Quest.
Yes.
Streaming on Netflix, starring Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, and Alan Rickman, who is, the best character in this by a country mile. But yeah, it's it's essentially a comedy based around, you know, old Star Trek and washed up has-been actors who spent years and years and years doing the same TV show over and over and over again, for them to then get flung into space where aliens have essentially reconstructed the show for them, but it's real. It has some very it's very emotional as well. I found, especially in some scenes. But yeah, it's very funny, and inadvertently, it's proves. I've got 2 Sam Rockwell picks on this. This is one of them. So he's in this, and he's very, very funny in it. Very funny. So it just proves he can do comedy and also drama, which is my next pick. But yeah, it's a really good time. I'd recommend. I've watched it about three times for this, and it just gets better every time. Every time.
It's a very overlooked film, I think. I do think it is picking up a cult following now, though, thankfully, because it definitely deserves it. It's a film that I'd love to talk about on the channel at some point, whether it's a retro review, whether we do a watch along to it at some point. It's fantastic, and I remember that I went to see this at the cinema, and I wasn't intending to go and see this film at the cinema. I think we had plans to see a different film. We got there, and I think we got the time messed up, and it was just what else is playing around about this time. It's like a film called Galaxy Quest. Never heard of it. Didn't particularly want to go and see it, and instantly fell in love with it as soon as I watched it. When I can't even remember what year it came out now. I think it was it the 90s? Was it early 2000s? Yeah. Oh God, I was 6 years old. Jesus Christ. And I loved it. And even as a person who hasn't really, you know, I'm not a fan of Star Trek. I respect it for what it is, but I've never really been into it. I still don't think you have to be a diehard Star Trek fan to appreciate it. I think you can still, you know, obviously it helps if you're at least familiar with Star Trek to know what it's parodying and everything like that. But it's just a great commentary on, and especially now sort of getting more into conventions myself as of, you know, like a few years ago. It says a lot for that, and you see these actors, you know, who are typecast for these roles. That's more Alan Rickman's character, and yeah, no, it is emotional, especially the stuff I would say surrounding Alan Rickman's character. And there's like a nice little arc with the character that he goes through in the film. Yeah, it's brilliant, and I'd love to see a sequel. I don't think it's doable now. I think you needed Alan Rickman for that sequel, but what a supporting cast! What an ensemble cast for this film as well.
Yeah.
I think Galaxy Quest. I would say it's the term postmodern's thrown around so much. This coming out in '99, the culture we live in. Now, Chris, you mentioned it, conventions. How many times have we gone to them? We're so excited to meet someone. And that person's like, "Fuck's sake, they're going to talk about Star Wars again." And you know, yes, Star Trek was the original convention circuit thing. Because Star Wars really didn't get big till the noughties with conventions when Celebration was created, but it's incredible watching this as the years have gone by. Even I think I've seen this film twice. The first time was the late noughties. Last time was probably 2-3 years ago. And it's like so much has changed in our culture today, but it reinforces the point this made in '99. And I think I haven't seen it. Screen Junkies did a documentary for its 20th anniversary on Galaxy Quest, the creation, its impact, its legacy. I know it's fascinating, but this is one. If anyone hasn't seen this, you know, if you've watched our channel and stuff like that, this is one you should watch. You'll probably love because it's almost a commentary on today's society done 20 years ago.
The obligatory, I haven't watched it and it's been on my list forever, kind of.
Oh my God. I do. I think it works as a sci-fi film on its own, though. Yeah. Just as it's just a great sci-fi film, just disconnected from everything. But and I love the conceptual design, like the look of the villains, the aliens, the ships. It's so good, so good. Tate, that's number 1 on your list to go watch Galaxy Quest.
I have so many number 1s on my list.
just a bit of quick trivia. So there's a scene where Tim Allen, during a convention, goes to the bathroom and overhears 2 guys talking about how lame and sad everyone is. Apparently, that is based on something William Shatner overheard about himself in a bathroom. So it's the parallels between those two are fantastic. But yeah, very funny.
Awesome. Right. On to my third pick, I think. Right. So again, unfortunately, I promise the next 2 films after this one, there is a place where you can watch these films. But this one will probably be like another DVD purchase or again, however you watch your films. This is Equilibrium. So this is starring Christian Bale. This came out in 2002. It's a science fiction, not too distant future, dystopian future film. Now, is it great? No. Is it very, very good? Yes, it is. I think this is a film where I appreciate the concept of it, and I think that maybe in slightly better hands of a director or a slightly more focused vision, a bit more thought-provoking vision, I think it could have been something truly special and probably one of the best sci-fi films out there, or at least sort of dystopian future films. The concept of this film is that in some point in the future, World War III has happened, and as a retaliation to that, they've now imposed this new thing where feelings and emotions are outlawed, and every day you have to take this vaccine, which diminishes and completely eliminates all sense of love, anger, like comedy, just everything. People are basically walking around like emotional husks because they think that emotions led to what was World War III. So essentially, you have this totalitarian government backdrop, and then as the film goes on, you have Christian Bale, who is one of the enforcers of this. He's sort of like this, not like I guess he's kind of like one of the judges almost in like Dredd or something like that. He's that kind of high up role, and he starts to not take the serum and has to sort of essentially overthrow this government. That's essentially the plot of this thing. Now, this came out in 2002, and if you look at the poster for this thing, if you look at any of the action scenes from this film, it is clearly aping off the success of the Matrix films, and I think that's probably the biggest comparison of this film. And whilst the action in this film is very good, some fantastic choreography, there's a thing called gun kata, which is quite ridiculous and is clearly there just to get the action scenes where you have, it's like the Karate Kid or something. They're throwing all these moves together with these guns as a way to execute all these people. You've got the long black flowing coats that people are wearing. So visually it is very similar to The Matrix, and I think that's probably its biggest drawback. But the themes and the initial world that it sets up and the concept of the film, I think, is really fascinating. I think Christian Bale plays it very well. There are some fantastic scenes within the film, but I don't know whether that was a studio decision saying, well, to make this more palatable, to make this more marketable to people, we need all these high-octane action scenes in there. And it does feel very much like The Matrix when you watch anything like that. So that aside, I think it is a really good concept. There are some fantastically filmed scenes in there. Christian Bale, again, solid actor, and with the material that he gets given is brilliant. I just wonder what this could have been like if it had more of a restrained take on it. And I guess like V for Vendetta is another good comparison. It's again a very similar concept of a totalitarian government where in the film, and this is with the Wachowskis link, that also has very over the top slow-mo Matrix like action scenes in there, which I don't believe were present in the original graphic novel. So this was clearly a product of its time, early 2000s, trying to ape off the success of something else. But as I said, although it isn't great, there are concepts there that could have blossomed into something truly magnificent. But I think it's still a worthy watch. I think it's still a really good sit.
For me, this is... Oh,
do you want to go?
Yeah, for me, this is a film, like you said, it's very close to The Matrix, but that almost kind of takes away from the film itself. I always got that kind of 1984 but action vibe to it, and I think it possibly would have done better if it didn't go fully for that. And maybe it was a studio decision to go, oh yeah, The Matrix is really popular, we could do something with that here and stuff like that. But I still enjoy the film. Mm-hmm. Like it does have good rewatchability value. I think the problem is now people who come across this film go, oh, well, it's just a Matrix ripoff, so I'm not going to watch it. And that's probably what does it in the most.
I've not seen this, and this is the thing with Christian Bale films. Certainly, I want to say when he's younger. I mean, not as young as Empire, not Empire of Dreams, whatever the
Empire of the Sun.
Empire of the Sun. That's the rated for one. I've got this to-do list of him and Adam Driver's films, and this is one of the Christian Bale ones near the top that I've not been able to pick up, and you can't find copies of legally online to be able to watch at home. And even if it's a Matrix ripoff, I'm still intrigued because maybe when he's a bit younger, he's a bit different. But certainly, when he's someone that picks his projects so wisely, it's interesting going back to their earlier films, and maybe he wasn't picking them as wise, or there was a concept that he was in on that he wanted to be a part of, and maybe it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. But he's one of them actors where you kind of want to see a lot of things he does. And it's been on the list for a while. I've just not been able to get to it.
There was a Christian Bale film that I was going to pick, The Flowers of War, which I think is one of his best. But this, I think, is easily one of his worst, if not his worst. And sorry, Chris, I don't want to shit all over. But I understand sort of the interest in the world and the concept. I don't think it's executed very well at all, and it's another project where Sean Bean dies
in the first 5 minutes.
But I think it tries too hard to make things look cool instead of going really heavy on its ideas and its world building and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think it's very good, and in fact I think it's crap. But
Wow.
I think it's as you mentioned, it's worth a watch to see what it could have been. The ideas that you pick up in there, if put in the hands of a competent filmmaker, might yield fantastic results. But I think it's an interesting one to go back to. I'll give it a rewatch, see if my opinions changed a bit.
Tom just shits all over my pick right there.
Hey, I don't like
If anyone-
over it.
If anyone wants to see a bad Christian Bale film, is called Swing Kids, which is him playing someone in a Hitler Youth, and Kenneth Branagh is playing a Gestapo leader or something like that. So if you want a really bad Christian Bale film, go find that.
Really quick
Salvation.
So, Tom, you mentioned The Flowers of War. Going back, this is like a trip down memory lane. Is that the one that we watched at uni? I think we got a screener for it. Yes.
And I remember being at uni with you. We were quite bored through it.
Yeah, we were. But now I think about it, I think, it probably was one of his best. It's maybe one to go back to, but yeah.
Okay, George, your pick.
So my next pick. So I was going to say it's Christian Bale's birthday yesterday. I don't have a Christian Bale pick though. Someone mentioned Sam Rockwell earlier, which is why I'm going to go with this one next. This is the Way Back. I'm not sure if anyone has seen this, but this is a film I saw. I think in 2013 it came out. That was the year. I think we've all had that year or two when you're at college or uni, whatever, when you see everything and everything. There's no holding back. You just saw everything. I look at today like, how did I see every film that came out the year that I really wanted to? And it's one of those memories. And I was so glad I did, because I remember back in the day listening to like podcasts and stuff. Mark Commode, when I used to listen to everything religiously on like a Friday afternoon, they're all hyping up this film. And I said, oh, it's co-directed by Jim Rash. I was like, wait, the Dean? And turns out it was. This is a honestly really good, heartwarming film. It's a coming-of-age film. It's not the kind of film I'd normally go and see, but essentially about a teenager that goes on summer vacation, and he's got like an abusive stepdad, the usual story, and he wants a bit of escapism to get out from that reality. And he essentially befriends Sam Rockwell, who works at a water park. The Dean, he's in it as well, and he basically ends up working and not living, but he ends up becoming BFFs with Sam Rockwell. And this is, to me, until I saw Three Billboards, this was my favorite Sam Rockwell film. I think he was better in this than he was in Moon, but I think he absolutely steals this. And then you get other people. You get like Steve Carell that's also in it. You got some of the SNL people, Maya Rudolph's in it as well. And it was just a really nice film that I don't think many people have seen it, but I don't know anyone that has seen it and disliked it. And I think it's one worth sort of seeking out, and it sits very comfortably on that shelf behind me. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. I don't even think I've discussed it with you all before, actually. But for any Sam Rockwell stands, it's got to go on the list.
Well, I was going to say, I love Rockwell. I love me some Rockwell. So I'm sold on that. And you mentioned the Dean as well. But no, this is one that I have never heard of until now. So this is completely news to me.
And also, there is an obligatory Sam Rockwell dancing scene as well. Granted, it's a couple of seconds, but they made sure they put that in there. But no, it was like I said, it was something different. And I think even behind the scenes, no one wanted to pick this film up for years. And then Fox Searchlight did, and they were comparing it to Juno at the time, that sort of teenage coming of age film. So along those veins, that kind of comedy, that humor, and that drama.
I have not heard of this film. I didn't actually know that Jim Rash did anything else other than The Descendants, because that's the only thing that I've kind of known him for writing wise or anything like that, because that's the one that he won the Oscar for. But no, interesting. If it's put in the same category as like Juno and stuff like that from the same kind of time period, then I think it'd be quite an interesting watch.
Yeah, definitely. I'm adding it to my list. It's definitely not something I've heard of or seen. It seems to be a running theme, adding stuff to the list.
You gotta do it.
It's our in-house. Yeah, it's our in-house joke. The list. It doesn't stop.
Yeah,
the people that don't know film get really offended. You have a friend at home that's like, "Oh, I add to my list," and they're like taking as offense. I was like, are you joking? Like about 10 people give me films to watch every other day. Yeah.
Before we move on to my next pick, we actually have a comment from Carl Roberts. My underrated pick, Safety Not Guaranteed on Netflix. A team of journalists set out to find who's behind a classified ad seeking a companion for time travel. Is he crazy or telling the truth? I have seen this film. I quite like this film. I almost picked this film. It's a Colin Trevorrow film. It's the only Colin Trevorrow film that I'll actually go back and watch again because all of his other films are trash. What's the one that he made? What was it? The Book of Henry? That's the one.
That's it.
The one that won all the Razzies.
You know what? He was robbed of an actual okay Star Wars script. The key word is okay. We don't know how bad it could have turned out, but I've heard of Safe Not Guaranteed. I think Jeff from Curb Your Enthusiasm is in it. Sorry, I've been on a hype watching that. But no, I've heard of
it. In it as well, and what's his face? The guy who he was in New Girl. He voices Peter B. Parker in Into the Spider-Verse. Jake
Johnston.
Johnson or Johnston, one of the two. But he's in it as well. Okay, I'm going to move on to a slightly confusing pick. So this one, I guarantee no one has heard of before. This is Nar. Now, there's a lot to explain here with Nar. First of all, look at that beautiful poster. What on earth are we looking at? This is a short watch. This is an hour and 10 minutes, and it's somewhere between a documentary and a game kind of explanation video. So basically, I'm a ski instructor. I'm out here in Austria. I'm skiing at the moment, and this is basically a game that some people made up in America at a resort where they would do the stupidest things and earn points, and they would get money off it in the end. So it started off with naked skiing, and that led on to a variety of different things, such as putting Tic Tacs in gnomes, and just the craziest shit you've ever done, just doing different lines down the mountain and everything like that. It got them kicked out of the resort, obviously, because you can't ski naked. But basically, they took it on the road, and it became a worldwide phenomenon to the point where pretty much every single ski resort will have someone playing the game of Nar at some point. They don't go to the extremes of skiing naked, but for example, slapping someone on the forehead whilst you ski past them, claiming to be the best skier on the mountain, claiming to be a better skier than everyone else, getting on the lift at the start of the day, downing cans of Red Bull and shit like that. There's so many different rules that you can actually look at online, but this is basically an hour and 10 long documentary of these guys who created it and tried to make it into an actual sport. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the funniest documentaries that I've ever watched. It is unbelievably funny. You don't even have to like skiing to enjoy this, because the enthusiasm that the people bring to it, how passionate they are for their sport that they basically invented, and just the ability to go around skiing naked and stuff like that. It is just honestly so funny.
Tayte, what you do in the privacy of your own log cabin in the mountains of Austria is your business. That's your business, whether you're putting Tic Tacs in gnomes or in each other, either one. I have never heard of this film. This sounds like something you'd stumble upon on Pornhub.
It's on Vimeo. No, they blur out all of the nakedness, but you lose points for certain things.
You lost me. You had me at the nakedness, mate. You've instantly lost me.
Here's the thing, though. They're going down. They're basically skiing off cliffs naked, and they lose points if they crash. And obviously, if they crash, they're going to hurt themselves because it's snow and rocks and shit like that. So there is an element of danger to it and stuff like that. But honestly, it's an hour and 10 minutes long. It's a short watch, and it is fantastic.
This feels like some kind of fever dream, cabin fever that goes on with you guys. Like, I'm just going to leave that between you and you.
But
I think
to go along with
it's on. Nick found this on Pornhub. I think he's just uploaded it to Vimeo.
It's on Vimeo if you want to watch it. It's only an hour and 10 minutes long. You don't have to pay anything for it. But seeing as this is my obligatory time where I can talk about ski films very quickly, I want to point out two other picks that you could go for. If you want beautiful visuals and a great soundtrack, watch Art of Flight. That's about snowboarding and stuff like that. If you want to be super depressed and watch a video of basically a person trying to recover from being paralyzed and becoming a vegetable, watch one of the saddest films I've ever seen called The Crash Reel. which is a fantastic documentary about snowboard halfpipe riders.
Or if you want to watch a fun skiing film with great visuals, go watch Eddie the Eagle, which is also a really good film.
Or if you want to watch people skiing down cliffs naked, then watch Nah.
The poster reminds me of, if anyone that's ever worked in retail or anything, it's like the front cover of a Viz magazine.
That's what they're going for.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the documentary, but
see, look, you can hold on very quickly. On the right hand side, you can see the gnome.
That poor gnome.
Right there.
That poor gnome has seen. Actually, it kind of. If anyone knows the film Animal House, it's a very similar poster to that as well. That kind of 2D design. This sounds.
But you have those people judging the competition as well whilst they were running it the first time round, and they were actually wearing judge clothing while skiing around the mountain. It's such a bonkers but hilarious film. I cannot recommend it highly enough.
Duly noted. Tom, on to your next pick.
Go on, Tom, top that.
I'll try. But my next pick is sort of taking more of a serious approach than Nah, and that's the Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, streaming on Amazon Prime Video rather. Brad Pitt's best film. Let's just put that out there straight away. His best film and Casey Affleck's best film that he's been in thus far. Easily also the best film of 2007. Beating out, in my opinion, No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood. 100%. Sorry.
What about Transformers?
I think the best film of 2007 was clearly Spider-Man 3, guys. Like, come on.
That's not opinion, that's fact.
Yeah, but Spider-Man 3 was the best film of 2007.
But no, it's a contemplative look at the last years of someone's life as he deteriorates mentally and starts to get paranoid about everything that's happening around him, to the point where he pairs himself up with his own his own death in Robert Ford, played by Casey Affleck, and he gives. I mean, he was nominated for the best supporting actor Oscar that year. Should have won it. It's a fantastic performance by him, but it's a very good film to unravel the psyche of essentially a lunatic. But it doesn't end with the titular assassination, as it were. The remainder of the film. Sorry. The remainder of the film is about the aftermath of Robert Ford's actions, and he himself is becoming in a depressive state. Did he do the right thing? Did he not? But yeah, it's about one man's obsession as well with looking at idols and the way we idolize people, to the point where he becomes so obsessed that he takes the life of someone he really looked up to. And obviously the title tells you all you need to know about the film. It gives away the fact that he gets killed, but it's not about that. It's about the journey that he goes on, the unraveling of the character and the obsession that people have with their idols.
What I really liked about this film is just that it is very bleak. It is a very stark film, but that works to the tone of the film. And with similar characters such as this, where you've got these sort of like gunslinging characters, you do idolize them in media and other things that you've seen. But this sort of strips it back to what goes through a person's mind who is just, a wanton murderer, essentially, just a psychopath. And I think it really does go into that very well. I think Brad Pitt plays it phenomenally. I don't agree with you that it's his best film. Me and George smiled. I think we were both thinking of the same thing. I think we were both going with a certain Tarantino film, which not Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But no, it is a fantastic performance, and it's just sort of showing the legacy of a character like that even though he's a horrible person, he is still, I don't want to say respected, but there is a certain reputation that comes with a person such as that.
I fell in love with this immediately when I first saw it back in the day, and yeah, it's beautiful as well. It's beautifully shot, and the score. It's Roger Deakins did the cinematography for it, and yeah, it's fantastic to look at. Fantastic to look at.
So I have not seen this film. However, I believe, Tom, you did a video on our channel several years ago on this film, actually. So I'm going to put links down in the description for people that want to know a bit more. I think it's a video essay in an old series. So have a look at that, guys. After the stream, we'll update the link to have that in there. But this is one that's been on my, I hate saying the list. This is a genuine one that when the time comes to see it, it's going to happen. It's not a distant thought. I'm just trying to find out when the timing is going to be for it, because I've not actually seen many Casey Affleck films, and I know a lot of people love his work. So I think there's going to be a day soon where I'll probably go through a couple of his big films, and this will be when I finally get to see it.
As much as I enjoy this film and respect this film, I do think this is a fantastic film. I think 2007 was possibly one of the most stacked years in cinema history. I disagree with you that it was the best film of the year. I think No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood could fight over that title forever. Honestly, like trying to choose between those two films specifically is an impossible task. And also,
but it's a wrong one.
I also believe that Brad Pitt's best performance came from Moneyball, but that's my own personal opinion as well. On top of that, but no, this film is fantastic. It is an amazing film. It should have probably got more recognition than it did at the time, because I think it was possibly overshadowed by the other two films mentioned. But yeah, a fantastic watch either way.
So we go to I've got 2 picks left, well, including this one. We're going to a very controversial person, director, actor. But nonetheless, I think he is incredibly underrated as a director, and especially this film. This is Apocalypto. It's directed by Mel Gibson. Again, available on Prime Video, as you can see at the bottom there. I just think he's a very, very overlooked director, especially this film, and the attention to detail that he brings to his period films, whether it be Braveheart, whether it be Passion of the Christ, and especially this one, Apocalypto. So this is sort of set in the Mayan culture, and he goes out of his way to use authentic dialogue from that time as well. The entire film is subtitled, as indeed Passion of the Christ was as well. Now, it might not be the most historically accurate film, and that was also the case with Braveheart, but it doesn't take away from how good the film is as its own separate entity. It's a very, very simple premise, how you have this peaceful tribe. A warring tribe comes in, takes most of them away to be human sacrifices, which, you see on the Mayan temples with all the steps at the side. And then it basically turns into Mad Max Fury Road before Mad Max Fury Road was a thing. This is a chase film. The main character gets away, and the entire sort of last half of the film is him running through the jungle, through wilderness, through the environment to get back to his home, to get back to his wife and child who he hid away at the initial attack. It's one of the most exhilarating films you'll watch. The whole ending sequence, it's tense, it's action-packed, you feel on the edge of your seat, and I know that that's a term that's thrown around a lot, but you genuinely do. Brilliant cinematography, and just Mel Gibson behind the camera is just absolutely fantastic, just in terms of how he can construct a film, in terms of its pace, in terms of its suspense and its emotion as well. Really overlooked, and this was the last film he made until 10 years later he made Hacksaw Ridge, which again I thought was really good. I actually think that film deserved to have like a 3.5 hour cut. It did feel very short for what it was trying to get across, and I would have liked a lot more. This takes its time in terms of costuming, just the environment, set design, everything. It's an outstanding watch. And just really is just like a notch on Gibson's belt as a director. I'd love to see him direct more stuff. I really would. He seems to crop up every now and then. I know that he starred in Fat Man last year, which is the Christmas action film, which I really want to see. That looks like a lot of fun. But in terms of him being behind the camera, I mean, again, it's been 5 years since his last film now. And when's the next one going to be? So I love seeing Gibson's take on historical films, and this one's definitely one of his best.
So I've not seen this. However, on Facebook, people always share clips from films and you hate it because it's always out of sequence or whatnot. I remember seeing a clip from this film, which is 2 people running away from the sort of basically the Nazis.
Yeah.
Javelins, that's it. And it was kind of like anxiety-inducing, and it was a 3-minute clip of 2 people running away.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching it. I remember checking the comments again. What film is this from? And it's Apocalypto, and you'd mentioned it to me before. I still haven't seen it, but it is one where I think, because of obviously Mel Gibson's behind the scenes stuff, that's that gap between Apocalypto and Hacksaw Ridge. But as a kid, I remember seeing posters for this at like DVDs, and I think this was up for Oscars. I remember hearing loads about it, but never seeing it, and it was probably down to the fact it's actually a foreign language film I didn't know, so no one had bought it me. But it's one I do want to see sometime, because I've not even seen Hacksaw Ridge yet. That was the first 4K film I bought.
No, it was a really good film, but again, it felt too short. It felt like it needed a little bit more. I don't know if stuff was removed or if they needed to get it down to like 2 hours bang on the dot. But yeah, he's a brilliant director. But no one talks. Obviously, they talk about him for his more personal things and things that he says and everything like that. But if you can sort of distance yourself from the man himself and the work that he makes, he does some really fantastic stuff.
Talented director and writer and actor, controversial figure outside of that.
Yeah.
I think I remember when I was younger, my dad got this from Blockbuster, and I don't know if I sat in on part of the film or whether I watched the entire thing, but I do have distinct memories of certain scenes from the film. I don't know whether that's because I've seen part of the film, I've seen the whole thing, but it probably should be one that I should revisit either way, because it is, I'd say, quite an important film in history. It's one that uses like accurate dialogue from the times, at least. I love my foreign language films. Doesn't matter which country they come from. So I think it'd be a very interesting rewatch now that I'd say my knowledge of cinema and my appreciation of cinema is a lot higher than what it used to be. So I think it'd be a different perspective that I get from it if I was watching it second time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very good. It's brutal as well. Is the main thing, and he does that really well. Kind of seems like, you know, he's maybe airing a part of himself in how brutal he makes his film, because they are you know quite visceral, and this one especially great. You know, besides the history behind it, and actually I recently watched a great video on this from History Buffs. Guy reviews historically inaccurate films, and there's a lot of Mel Gibson on there. Let's just say that. But you know, it's fantastic, especially when they're doing the sacrifices, and you just see the eclipse is a fantastic, you know, bit of cinema.
Definitely. So with that in mind, I'm going to move on to my fourth pick. This is a film I don't know if anyone here has seen. I've only discussed it, I think, with Chris the other day, actually. And I'm going to give my reasons why. So this is Patterson, if anyone's heard of this. This is directed by Jim Jarmusch, starring, of course, the one and only Adam Driver. So I kind of mentioned earlier I was going for a Christian Bale and Adam Driver long-term goal of seeing all their films. My two favourite actors, and a lot of people talk about Patterson. I'd never heard of it, in all honesty. It came out after Force Awakens, but Jim Jarmusch, if anyone's heard of him, he makes mainly independent films. Dead Don't Die is probably one of his most popular ones, which is the recent one with Adam Driver, Tilda Swinton. Oh my God, have I forgotten his name from Groundhog Day? Bill Murray, and he's also done Lovers Left Alive, which people may have also heard of. Anyway, so I'm not recommending this for the context of it. So the film's about poetry, and if anyone knows me knows what on earth is George doing talking about poetry. That's not why I'm recommending this film. It is a great film. The script writing is good, and there are sort of poetry things going on. But the main reason I actually picked this is way more personal. And it's not because I'm an Driver fan. His pet dog in the film is called Nelly. So, if anyone knows Cannes, you know, the ultimate, you know, festival of this, Palme d'Or is obviously the big awards. If you guys know, there is an award called the Palme Dog, and they give an award to the best performing dog of the year. And his dog in this is a bulldog. We've had bulldogs over the years, but this was a carbon copy of our bulldog at home. No joke. I showed Chris a photo. The bark was the same. Everything was the same. I remember watching this. I was calling my family and be like, "Oh my God, like this is exactly like Nancy was." The bark, the rasping, everything. And I remember just falling in love with this film based off the fact there was a really cute bulldog in it. Aside from that, it is a very enjoyable film. It's a very different film. It's nice to be able to have a different approach to something, not because it's Adam Driver that it's not the kind of film I'd normally gravitate towards. And I think there's something to be said when you get the actors that although they've had these big blockbusters, they still want to do the independent films, do the smaller films. And Jim Jarmusch is just one I've looked at a couple of his films since then. But I was mainly recommending this just off that fact, basically. But I believe this was up for a couple of awards. Again, more independent stuff, but It was actually a really good film, very enjoyable, and it was just quite likable. You're following Adam Driver plays a bus driver. In his spare time, he enjoys writing poetry. He's got like a wife in it, and he befriends other people, and it's just one of them films. It's just nice. It's a bit different, but yeah, watch it if you like dogs, definitely.
This film.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, this film keeps on appearing when I'm typing in, because this is something that I do quite a lot. Indie films to watch and stuff like that. This one comes up quite a lot as quite a tranquil indie film. Not one that's going to be blowing your mind off with anything that happens within the film, but just a calm viewing. And that's always intrigued me. And I think when we were going into watching Marriage Story for the first time, I had a look through all of the films that Adam Driver had done, and I think this one came up, and I was like, oh, interesting. It's not the kind of role that you'd expect him to be in or anything like that, especially because from previously I knew him from Star Wars, and that's pretty much it. So very interesting. It has been on my radar for a while.
So all I know from this film is the information that George, you told me the other day. The dog was very, very cute. So I got a lot of appreciation for the dog in there, and I'm a big fan of Adam Driver's as well. Having only seen at the moment, I want to say, the very controversial Star Wars sequel trilogy and Marriage Story. I probably have seen something else. And Black Klansman, obviously. They're sort of like the main hits I've seen at the moment. I think.
Logan Lucky.
Yeah.
It's fascinating with him because Star Wars has been big for him, but he's always picked his films wisely. Before them, in between them, and after them. He's just obviously filmed the new big Ridley Scott film. He's about to film the new Gucci film with Ridley Scott as well, which has got a massive cast. But in the last 6 weeks, he's just shot another independent film called 65. And another one that people spoke about, which I saw when it came out, is it Beyond Midnight? It was like a sci-fi film, and I was like, oh my God, it's Kylo Ren post Episode 7. He wasn't in it much. He wasn't a lead, but he has picked his films very differently. I think it's a fair way. Not every film of his has been great, but there's been...
and Silence as well. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Scorsese film, Silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a film that I probably should go back, but that's a very depressing film. I've got to be in the right mindset to watch that. It's
quite a long film as well, isn't it?
It's a very, very long film. I fell asleep at the cinema watching it. It was so long. I've hit that age.
Okay.
This is the first I've heard about this, and Adam, as you mentioned, he picks his films quite well, much the same as Bale does. So I'm interested. I'm very interested.
It was on Amazon Prime, and for some reason it's now on Amazon Prime. But Amazon is this horrible subscription.
Yeah, I do have a Mubi account, which I'll.
You can get it on there. I was gonna say I saw it. I was like, wait, this isn't on Prime Video anymore. But no, there's a couple of great Adam Driver films. I'd recommend many more, but I've seen, I think, 18 out of 29 now. I'm almost there. But yeah, watch Pattinson for the dog. By the way, if you've never heard of Palm Dog, Tarantino's film won Palm Dog of the Year. That came out. It's quite an intriguing award for dog lovers. I just assumed...
Did the dog from John Wick win? That's the only question I have.
No, because that's quite sad. It was killed, wasn't it?
I know, but still...
It's just a weird award. I didn't know it existed until I saw this film too.
Yeah, it's a bit like they always have before the Super Bowl in America. They have the Puppy Bowl where they have puppies dress up in the jerseys and then try and push a ball towards the end zone. So this is the film version of that, I guess. Moving on, horror films. I didn't even realize that Shudder was a streaming service. Like, I'm guessing that is a streaming service for horror films. That would make sense. This is It Follows. Something that is quite common with some of my picks are that kind of amazing aesthetic of that 80s influence coming into modern day films like we had in Good Time. I think Blue Valentine has quite a lot of that as well to go with it. But It Follows is a film that I only watched for the first time a year and a half ago, and I loved it. This is... I'm not usually the horror film person for this channel. That is definitely Chris. Has always been Chris. That will always be Chris. But this film takes the approach of horror films that I like when I see horror films. I don't want jump scares. I want tension being built up. I want you to be invested into the characters before they get killed off and stuff like that. And this is a stalker horror film. It's a STD that basically manifests as someone stalking you throughout the night. And as such a crazy concept, the only way that you can get rid of the person stalking you is by passing it on and leaving that fate to someone else. But if that person dies, it comes back to you. So you've always got that kind of sense of, should I pass it on knowingly, knowing that I'm giving away this horrible threat and it could come back later, or should I just accept my fate? Because there's no way out. This thing is unstoppable. It will take any shape, any form, and it will just come for you. And this is set on the backdrop of an amazing soundtrack that I need to actually add to my movie score playlist on Spotify because I want to listen to it more. It also comes with a very lazy camera, a camera where you're not always following the character. You're almost 2 steps behind at some points, which makes it even worse because you're worried the camera's like the person's gone off screen. Where are they? And it's almost like you're chasing them, like you are the monster yourself, which is just fantastic filmmaking. I cannot recommend this as a horror film more than that, really. It's just a fantastic horror film that maybe a little bit unheard of, maybe kind of went under the radar, but I think it's starting to pick up a bit of a cult following, so maybe more people will be talking about it in the future.
I'm a bit of a horror snob, and especially when it comes to modern horror, I think that it's quite significantly lacking compared to what it used to be, sort of like decades ago. But if I'm ever going to recommend a horror film from the modern era, It Follows is always one that I recommend. You mentioned the soundtrack, fantastic soundtrack, very synth-wavy, sort of like aping off that 80s kind of synth sound, which I always appreciate and gives it a really sort of just a different feel to it, a feel that you don't really get in many horror films now. It feels very low budget, which I also think works to the film's credit. And ultimately, yeah, it's not filled with jump scares. And the jump scares that are in the film, I feel, are earned because it plays on that sense of dread and atmosphere, which is always what a horror film should do. You mentioned the camera. It's fantastic because you are constantly looking in the background to see if anything's advancing closer.
Always. I think, is there a scene where they just pan across a crowd incredibly slowly?
Yeah.
Like the shot lasts about 30 seconds and you only cover about 30 meters of actual scene that you can see, but it's looking across a university campus and you're looking around and you see some people sitting down. You see some people walking towards the camera and then walking away. You see some people walking in the deep background and it's just like, it could be any one of them because it can take any form. It's not a fast kind of horror. It's something that walks very slowly. Even when you're back against the wall and the door to your room is 5 meters away, it's still going to walk very slowly towards you. That's terrifying. If something runs up to you, it's like, oh, jump scare. Okay, the horror's over. But if this thing is just slowly creeping towards you and you know the second it touches you, you're dead, that is crazy scary as far as a horror concept.
Yeah, it's like the Terminator. It's like this thing can't be stopped. It's always going to stalk you. And that, to me, that is a threat that's always way more imposing than any sort of like crazy exorcism or whatever it happens. Because you put yourself in those shoes. Now, you could argue, why couldn't they just get on a plane and fly to like the other side of the world? Is this thing going to walk? Is it going to walk underwater?
I think people have actually made videos kind of trying to figure out how you could survive it and stuff like that. And I think they figured out the best technique would be to, because they're from America, stay within America and basically go coast to coast every 4 months. And that's the only way you can survive, because if you go across the other side of the world, they could corner you in somewhere where you're unfamiliar with your surroundings. At least if you're in America, you can time the space you get from one side to the other and keep it constant.
Now, I've not seen It Follows, but can we have a Liam Neeson as they're about to die saying you never learn to mind your surroundings?
Tom, have you seen it?
Yeah, easily probably one of the best modern day horrors you'll find. It's very tense, especially as you know. I'll sort of echo what you guys have said. It's the camera work is sublime. The soundtrack, the use of extras, and you don't know who is who, if one of them is the monster, or it's quite good that you know, you find out that the thing can actually be incapacitated, at least for a moment, which gives people a moment of respite, but then it's straight back up and at you, and it's super slow, and I think it's fantastic. I always want to go back and watch it. So this has given me an incentive to go back and take another look, because it's fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay, Tom, it's your next pick.
Okay, so coming off the back of George's wrestling documentary, my next pick is the 2019 film Fighting with My Family, which streams on Netflix, directed by Stephen Merchant. Oh wait, isn't he that very, very tall, gangly man that appears in The Office, not Extras? Yes, but he's also a very good director, it turns out. It's a fabulous feel-good film, fabulous, and sort of not knowing the history of sort of the real life counterpart of Paige, the main character in the movie. So don't believe she actually does wrestling anymore. Is that correct?
No, I think she didn't break her neck, but she had enough neck injuries for them to say you can't do it anymore. So very, very young as well to get retirement, which was a big shock when they announced that.
She's from Blackpool, I think, isn't she? She's from Blackpool, if I remember right.
No. Norwich, maybe Norwich. I think.
Norwich.
Very good and very funny, but also very heartwarming when it needs to be. A Vince Vaughn film that I actually enjoy watching. He's in this, and he's actually very good in it. There's very few Vince Vaughn films I actually like. This is one of them. The cast is fantastic. You've got Nick Frost in there, great. Lena Headey, great. Also, Dwayne Johnson makes an appearance. He's also really good. But yeah, it's about overcoming adversity, and sort of one of the characters gives up on their dreams in order to support their sister, who is the main character, Paige. Feel good, fabulous, love it. And even if you don't know anything about wrestling, you can watch it and still enjoy it. So I watched this with my housemate, and he's one of those people that why do people watch wrestling? It's fake. Well, yeah, of course, but he enjoyed it as well. So even if you have no love for wrestling, you can still watch this and really enjoy it.
I'm in that party. I don't enjoy wrestling. I've seen the film and I enjoyed it.
So I'm in the weird party. I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I'm one of the few wrestling fans that hasn't actually seen this yet. Even my sister, who watches wrestling, well, not anymore either, but even she was like, "Why the hell haven't you seen this?" And I don't really have an answer. I've seen the original documentary this is based on, so I don't know how familiar people are with the behind the scenes. That The Rock was shooting Fast 6 in London. He was probably bored at his hotel. He was watching TV, and on came this documentary about this family that have their own wrestling promotion, and they're trying to do this. I think it was a Channel 4 back in the day, and he went out and I think he got the rights himself to be able to make this into a thing. Obviously, it's The Rock going to Vince McMahon, which isn't as much of an issue. It's his base. Vince McMahon's baby is basically The Rock, Undertaker, and John Cena, and he says, can I speak of Paige? Can we have meetings with a family? And then he got that commissioned off the back of that. And I remember there's a lot of hype. Florence Pugh as well, who is, let's be honest, if people don't consider an A-lister by now, they very much will within the next year or two already. She's a household name. To get her in, almost looking back, that's perfect casting for it. And it's quite fascinating seeing the reaction. Again, as someone that's an older, I guess, as an insider that's not really into it anymore, seeing how well this was with people that aren't interesting was really fascinating, and I think that's what I always followed. But I've not had a chance to see it yet. I would be intrigued to see it, just because with Paige, very fascinating individual, family upbringing. She had a lot of issues, even the ones, everyone's heard of the main one, but she's been through a lot of problems with injuries, relationships with other wrestlers, a couple of events. She originally walked out of WWE, and I was at British events that she was coming to with her boyfriend at the time. So really fascinating individual. And of all the wrestlers you'd want films on, she, honestly, has one of the most remarkable stories. And I believe the film has the fight where she wins the title on her debut. I'm guessing that's in there as well. And if they don't want some more behind the scenes stuff, the person she won the title from is married to CM Punk. I don't know if you guys have heard of CM Punk, but he famously walked out in the WWE. One of the most famous walkouts of all time. And the night they recorded that at Raw, because it's always been so hard with the fans because they all loved him, they even booed The Rock when they realized they were trying to play the CM Punk music. Loads of fascinating behind-the-scenes stuff, but Fighting My Family is a film I'm going to see eventually. But even my sister even has it on Blu-ray, and I haven't even just took it to watch it. So I will see it eventually. But for you guys that have seen it, do check out the original Channel 4 documentary as well, because it will show how perfect the casting is, but also how like bizarre it was. And again, fair play to The Rock for choosing to produce that. They could have done a remake, they could have robbed it, done their own American spin on it, but they just did it as it was. So fair play.
See, I didn't know all the things that it was based on. I knew of Paige at the time, and I think she was kind of I don't know if she was an up-and-coming wrestler at that time, or she was relatively new to the sport of wrestling at that point. I remember seeing the trailer for the thing. Now, I love me some Lena Headey, so I was sold on that instantly. But I did kind of have this thought at the back of my mind, you've got The Rock, it's like a comedy film. I was like, is this just made in order to push this wrestler? And just, she's kind of sporadically popular at the moment, let's just make a film, slap it together and get it out there. I didn't know that Stephen Merchant directed this thing, and I didn't know all the other information around it, so now that's made me much more curious to go and check this out, because I don't really know much about Paige. I was aware that she was wrestling at the time, but other than that, really don't know anything else. So I don't know if this film is a good sort of like entry into that, or if you should go George's route and watch a documentary on it first and then go into the film to get a bit more insider information on it. But the trailer looked fine. It looked like a good comedy film, but I did think, is this just made literally just to get someone popular at the moment and get a film out there, relatively new at the time?
I do also think that going off what you said about the trailers, to me, when I first saw them, the fact that The Rock appeared in it, because I didn't know any of the history upon seeing it, I thought, oh, is this just going to be another vehicle for him? It's good that he's attached to it, so it can get bums in seats essentially, but also for people that have no idea about the history behind the real life Page. They can look at it and go, this isn't just another Rock movie or another Dwayne Johnson film. I'll just probably skip it or whatever. I know it sort of has an air about it that it's not going to be very good.
Yeah, there was a bit of that when I saw the trailer as well. I think when he showed up, I was like, well, of course, he's in everything at the moment.
Was it? He's got a cameo in the film, right? And nothing worse than putting the cameo in the trailer. That's something I always hate. But I want to say she retired in 2016. And they kept her around as like a promoter, not merchandise, but if you guys have seen it, they'll have like managers on Raw and stuff, and they've kept her within the company. But that was what was crazy, that her retirement was a big shock. Not surprising with the injuries, but the fact that she had to retire at the age of 26 from wrestling, because she was so young when she broke through, and I think that's what the film explores as well. So I would recommend it, even though I've not seen it.
Before I get on to my final pick, I don't believe we've read this comment out, have we? We had another comment about 20 minutes or so ago from, this is an amazing name, Barlin the Hobbit, which is incredible. And look at that thumbnail as well. My God, that's just
yoga.
That's just a triple
is that the
whammy
Hulk
right
with
there.
Yoda?
Yeah, that is indeed the Hulk with Yoda.
What do we call it? The yolk or Hoda?
Hoda's too close to Hodor. Let's go with the yolk, because that's perfect. My picks are I'm Not Really Here and The Endless Trench on Netflix.
I'm Not Really Here is fantastic. Is
that the Joaquin Phoenix one? Yeah, I saw that last year. I need another rewatch. It's very different to what people told me it would be, so I'd need to give it another rewatch to be fair on it.
I do know that one now. Now you said Joaquin Phoenix. I've heard that was really good, but again, George, you said you knew the hype going into it, but you said it's not that kind of film. So now I'm like, what do I make of this?
People talk about like one or two moments and make out that's the entire film when it's like a 10-second moment from a drama. So I need to see that again in the future. But that has a massive cult following, and that is one that people talk of very highly. So maybe worth watching. I'd recommend other Joaquin Phoenix,
wasn't it? I think was it snubbed for Oscars, or it didn't get much attention?
I think it was snubbed for Oscars. I think I guess cinematography, editing, maybe even could have been put forward for it. So
okay, so we get on to
my final picks.
Final picks now. Oh, go on. Sorry. Go on. Sorry.
Google or Bing, as I'm using because I'm a weirdo. That if you search up "I'm Not Really Here," it comes up with a book by Tim Allen.
So let's go back to Galaxy Quest and bring it full circle. Right. My final pick. Now, I do think we have mentioned Ridley Scott at some point during this discussion. I forgot in terms of what context, but this is a Ridley Scott film, one that is very much overlooked and one that I consider to be one of his best. If you watch the correct cut of this film, and that's going to be my caveat.
Long one. Are we talking about the long?
For the longest. Go big or go home. This is 2005's Kingdom of Heaven. So apparently this is streaming on Sky. This is going to be one of those moments where I say don't watch it on Sky because I'm assuming that's going to be the theatrical version of the film. This was a film that was absolutely butchered by the studio. The film that Ridley Scott had made is easily one of the best historical period films ever made. The battle scenes in it are just outstanding. Some fantastic performances in there, and also Orlando Bloom is in the movie. Now I will stand by that. Whichever cut you see of this film, I think that, he was popular at the time off the back of Lord of the Rings, off Pirates of the Caribbean. He was the big name. And I do think he is incredibly miscast in this film. And I would have been interested to see a film where they had got someone different. That being said, that aside, it's an incredible film and just really shows Ridley Scott at his apex. You had Gladiator, fantastic film 5 years before this one. This takes us to 12th century Jerusalem in the setting of the Crusades, which is a really fascinating historical period anyway. Now, this is the version to watch. There are 3 versions of this film that were released. There is the theatrical version, which I would recommend everyone not see, which clocks in at 144 minutes, so still a relatively long film. There's the director's cut, which was released that same year. Then there's the extended director's cut, and that's the version that you want to go for. So
that's 194 minutes.
100, yeah, it adds just shy of an hour into it, and it's a much needed hour. It completely transforms the film. It's not one of those where you can still watch the theatrical and get the gist of it. Lord of the Rings, you can still get the gist of it with the theatrical version. The extended is just like a nice embellishment. This completely redoes the film from scratch. So I've got it on DVD. It's called the Definitive Edition, but I think on Blu-ray it's called the Ultimate Edition. So I think there is a name change there. And this makes it almost like an old school like Hollywood film, when you had the overture at the beginning with the music and the intermission, that's all in there. It's just outstanding. You've got one of the best performances I've seen with Edward Norton in there as well. I'd probably say this is my favorite role of his, and for the majority of the time is behind a mask.
Sorry, Chris, was that Edward Norton from Captain America?
I can confirm it is actually Edward Norton. I got it right this time. You've got Eva Green in there. You've got so many actors. You just need to check out the cast for this thing. Liam Neeson is in this film, George. He is in this film. And yeah, I think it's just one that gets overlooked. You talk about Ridley Scott's filmography of his best films. Alien's always on there, quite rightly so. You've got Blade Runner, you've got Gladiator. And then there's always that point as to where Ridley Scott dropped off the map as a director a little bit in terms of his projects. And he has had some really awful films. I'm not going to say he hasn't, but this is one that sort of just never gets brought up as one of his best or one of his worst. It's just sort of came out at that awkward time. And I think that maybe had this have been released as the full edition, or even just a little bit extra in there than the theatrical edition provided, I think this is one that would have been definitely talked about a lot more. So if you're into historical films, I know you've got to do a bit of digging to get the correct cut and everything. I know it's a bit annoying, but it's an absolutely outstanding film. Easily one of the best I've seen, I think.
Hashtag released not the Snyder cut, sorry, the Ridley Scott cut.
Ridley Scott loves his final cuts, doesn't he? Like Blade Runner, you had the directors. How many cuts of Blade Runner were released? Like 5 or something?
Gladiator got an extended edition. Gladiator's got extended as well. And yeah. I like Ridley Scott. And this thing, I've not seen this. And I think you spoke to me before about this when you've I think I meant to watch it once. Like, no, there's another version. And I was like, okay.
There is another.
I'm probably just going to... Yeah, I'm just going to pick something else right now. It's not a Snyder cut or anything like that. But I like Ridley Scott. I think he's an easy target for people to go in on. He has made some clangers, but some of them aren't as bad as they make out to be. I think because it's Ridley Scott and because he's done this, I think it was Robin Hood one where people say it wasn't that bad. And it's because he'd done Gladiator, because he'd done this, because he'd done that. It's bad because Ridley Scott didn't do it as well as he could have done it. So I'd be curious to see this because it's one that I've still not seen. And he's got, as I said, he's got The Last Duel coming out this year with Adam Driver and Matt Damon. He's got the Gucci film, which is going to probably... I mean, he's got back-to-back Oscar films potentially, so it'd be very interesting to catch up some Ridley Scott films down the line.
Yeah. This is definitely a really...
Oh, go for it.
I was going to say, this is definitely a Ridley Scott film that is underappreciated depending on what version you watch.
Mm.
And as Chris mentioned, the extended version is the superior film, butchered by Fox. Ridley Scott's an interesting one. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, but I will readily admit he is a very hot and cold film. Like some of his films are, he can go from, for example, stuff like American Gangster, fantastic, to Body of Lies and then Robin Hood, and then go on to make brilliant films like The Martian. So he's very, very hot and cold. I'll readily admit that. But this is
some Exodus Gods and Kings thrown in there as
Yes,
well. Was
I
that one of
remember
his?
I saw that in the cinema.
okay. It's not as bad as you think it is.
Oh, no, I think it is.
Good,
It's one to watch
not
on your Christian Bale
terrible.
films, though. Tick that off.
I've seen it. No, it is terrible. It is terrible. I just remember, like, I was, because I didn't know the religious history of it all, and I was like, "Is this the one where they like put the water walls up?" And I remember being so disappointed. It had a Ben Mendelsohn in before I knew who Ben Mendelsohn was.
The
That's my only
whitewashing in
reason.
that film is outrageous.
Yeah, it's not
It's
good, and
so bad.
there are random people that have appeared from films you wouldn't have imagined.
But anyway, the Kingdom of Heaven is really good.
I haven't seen this film, and the thing that's put me off every single time was, first of all, finding out that the normal version wasn't the correct version to watch. So I was like, okay, let's have a look at how long the actual version I should be watching is. And then I saw the runtime and I went, no, thank you, and put it off for another day. But I mean, I've got enough time now to be able to stick it on my list of things to watch. But one thing I wanted to bring up was there aren't enough films of this kind of time period, of this kind of setting. Like, if someone said, okay, name a film about the Crusades, the first thing that people would immediately think of wouldn't even be about Crusades. It'd be The Last Crusade. It'd be Indiana Jones, which has nothing to do with the Crusades, apart from the actual aim of the story. But yeah, I feel like there needs to be more films of this period. And I think when more films of this period get made, maybe this film gets thrown back into the spotlight as kind of the shining example of how to do it.
Absolutely.
Again, it's those historical epics that we associate with him, but it's one I've not seen. Sorry, what I got distracted. I want to say this Gucci film he's doing. The cast so far is Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Al Pacino, Jared Leto, Jeremy Irons, and this is the story of how the ex-wife of basically the ex-wife of Gucci plotted to kill the grandson or something like that based off real life. But
that's a great cast, and then Jared Leto's around for the.
I read his name out last. Don't worry. But no,
he's done some good
films. Kingdom of Heaven, though, is just you mentioned the runtime, Tate. It is one of those films that you've really got to clear a day for and just go, right, psych yourself. When The Irishman came out and you saw that it was 3 hours 28 minutes, it's like, right, this is happening, and this is happening tonight. So you do have to kind of schedule it in. But if you like your big long epic films, it's definitely one to check out.
Definitely. So my final pick, it isn't an epic. It is the smaller one. I don't know if anyone here's heard of it, but unfortunately people may have heard of an American remake of it. This is Fever Pitch, starring a very, very young Colin Firth. And the actress on the left has been on the news because she's in Bridgeton. Look at how poor the font is. 10-year-old you probably made this poster in IT lessons at primary school. For anyone that's unfamiliar with Fever Pitch, it was a famous book written by Nick Hornby. It was essentially a diary of him growing up as a football fan. It was a diary of how football influenced his life. I think his parents divorced, him going to his first game, his memories with those, going to games by himself, him as a teenager, in adulthood. But they decided any football fan which probably might have read that book or would have heard of that book. And they adapted it into a film in the late 90s. And it followed, obviously, he's an Arsenal fan. I'm an Arsenal fan. That's not why I picked it. I think any football fan would probably like this. It follows the 1989 Arsenal season, which is one of the most famous seasons in the club's history, with the best ending to a game ever in Premier League, not Premier League, in Division 1. Liverpool fans down below won't like it because that is when they lost the title to Arsenal on the last day.
My mum was there at that game, George. That's a cold wound to bring up.
It's the greatest. It's the greatest ending to a football game. Forget Aguero. Chris is like, what the hell are they talking about?
I'm sitting back. I'm sipping my water. You guys go ahead.
The football fans would have heard of Anfield '89, and the fact that they were able to put this into a drama. You've got a young Mark Strong as well. You've got these British actors emerging in the late '90s. It's an average film, but it's something really different. And if you are into your sports, you're into your football, it's really worth watching this. They were able to film scenes at Highbury. They filmed scenes, I think, at some other stadiums because obviously Highbury is being redeveloped at the time. It didn't look the same, but it's really fascinating to get insight into football via a different medium. That it's not about what's going on the pitch for a change. It's about a fan in the stand, one of millions of people that's got their own stories about how they went to football games, how it's influenced their lives. So I do recommend this. And unfortunately, the remake stars Jimmy Fallon and is about baseball, which came out in the mid-noughties. So that's what I'm telling people. If you've go watch the British one, it's a film for film. I think there's no streaming way, but you know how the classic film for British dramas are. Do find it out. Do have a watch if you are into football because it is worth watching. But yeah, that's. I don't know if anyone's seen that or heard of the book.
I've never heard of the book. I've never heard of the film until now. That astounded me that was Colin Firth. I was like, my God, he does look completely different on that. Who was the actress again on the main?
Don't know her name, but she's been on the news because she's in Bridgerton, which everyone's now watching. So
okay.
I think she played Tracy Beaker's mom. That's what I recognised her from.
I completely misheard you. I thought you said she's in prison. I was like, I didn't hear Bridget. Somehow I heard prison. I mean, you know my thoughts on football. It's a thing that people watch, and then there's me. But I'll leave the football discussion to you three, so you crack on. I mean, if you're into sports and you haven't watched it, then absolutely, I can understand the appeal of that.
I hadn't heard of this film. I think I'd actually heard of the baseball version because Fever Pitch, I'd immediately think, oh, pitching, baseball and stuff like that. The second you mentioned the 89 season, that brought back memories. I wasn't born at that time.
Yeah, I was
but my mum was at that game. My mum was at that game. She's a massive Liverpool fan. She's from Liverpool herself. That is a painful kind of family memory, which maybe I will watch the film, but that kind of deters me from doing it just in that point. But I'm guessing that doesn't distract me.
You're in Austria. The context of the game, because it is important. The moment it happened is Liverpool hadn't lost at home. Arsenal to win the league had to win 2-0. Chris, this was called goal difference and like goals scored. It's because of Arsenal. It was the last game of the season. You never get Team 1 versus Team 2 on the last day. Obviously, with the Hillsborough tragedy, the game was delayed a month. So all the journalists, all the pundits, everyone was desperate for Liverpool to win because they were going to do it for those fans that tragically passed away. And that's why there's a media business of Arsenal for the last 30 years. And Arsenal hadn't won at Anfield for years. They hadn't won a league title in 18 years. I think Liverpool's two strikers that had never lost a game together, and they lost 2-0 last kick of the game for the second goal by the Arsenal players. One of the most iconic moments in the history of the sport. But because it didn't happen in the Premier League era, half the people haven't heard of it or choose to pretend it didn't exist. But as far as the moment, it's just Colin Firth, and this is great. And the irony is that Mark Strong is actually an Arsenal fan. So he spoke in the past about that. He has memories watching that game as a kid and then acting in a film about it years later. He says it was very weird. And Colin Firth, I don't know if he's into football or not, but can anyone strike Colin Firth as a football fan? That's the weirdest thing about it.
I could, but I wouldn't suspect him as a Arsenal fan.
Yeah, like Colin Firth in a leather jacket, really.
So that picture, the Colin Firth, I thought when you put that up, I thought that it was Rob Schneider.
Oh no, George, he is an Arsenal fan.
He is. Well, there we go. It was for any Arsenal fans being this is probably easy. Whether this made him an Arsenal fan is another thing.
Because he was an Arsenal fan.
It's a very weird watch. It's different, but if you like your football, this is a must watch. But the book more so than anything is just fascinating, and that's great to read as well. But yeah, that's my final one.
Okay.
I'll add it to the list, I guess. You know.
Yeah, you're a Liverpool fan, so I don't expect you to be too interested.
Oh, this is so. You're on your own here. Sorry, you're on your own here, George. I'm the sidelines here.
I'll be reasonable. Stuff like that. I can see the how much it will mean or could mean to supporters of clubs that go through stuff like that or that happens to. So, that in particular, whilst pretty bad for Liverpudlians and Liverpool fans, I can see how Arsenal fans love it so much, and I can appreciate that.
I was wondering why you were being so quiet, Tom, during the discussion. I was like, either he supports someone completely different and has no time for either team. Or, okay, that makes sense.
The two Liverpool fans are here at the bottom. But okay, moving on to my
very quick.
That was brilliant. Sorry, continue.
I'm going to talk about a film which I can't even remember if I've talked about it a lot on this channel before. Maybe when we were a podcast, I maybe mentioned it in passing comment, or we did one video on it. But people who know me know that I preach this film, and that is Gattaca. Gattaca is my favorite film of all time. I know it's not the best film of all time, but it is one that I hold closest to my heart. This is a film which is a sci-fi film, but it leans more towards the science kind of side of things than most other science fiction films would do. It's not in the realm of fantasy, it's in the realm of predicting the future. This film's about genetics, it's about nature versus nurture. There's so many different philosophical things that you can look into on this film. The acting is fantastic. The score, my God, the score, it is just so overwhelming when you're listening to it. It makes me cry upon listening to it without even watching the film. That's how deep a connection is here to this film. It's something that I was shown in school for the first time, and we were shown clips of it as part of religious studies, as kind of a not faith versus science kind of argument, but an argument based on philosophies and how the future could be set with religion slowly kind of fading into the background and a more science-based culture being kind of brought up. And this film just inspires hope. That's all I can say. It has a bittersweet ending, which I love in any film. And it also has one of the best end of film speeches, I guess, which I'm pretty sure everyone here has seen it at least once. But I remember discussing it with Chris one time where he said he really enjoyed the final speech. So I'm going to hold him to that.
I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I'm sure if I watched it again.
People say that we come from stars. I'm returning to kind of where I came from, that speech. But this film, the setting in itself, I could go on for hours. I've got to keep it short, so I feel like I'm rambling here. This is fantastic. It's my favorite film of all time. Go watch it.
Tom, you're really doing a lot of nodding here.
Yeah.
I've not seen it.
Go on, Tom. Go on, Tom.
Like all good sci-fi, it taps into issues surrounding our culture and where we live right now, and sort of echoes some of the troubles that people are facing, philosophically or morally. This is fantastic. Has Uma Thurman and Jude Law in it as well. Jude Law's great in this, really good. But yeah, the clash between the genetically modified and the normal human that is trying to step above his post essentially is fantastic, and how he slowly chips away at the idea that genetically modified is better, or genetically altered humans are better.
But at the same time, within the film, you could make the argument, because the main character's goal is to get to space, but he can't do that with his genetic makeup. So he goes and alters himself to turn himself into a different person so he could be the person he wanted to be. Like, everything in this film has a meaning. Like, the staircase that is in the house is shaped like a double helix. Like, just little stuff like that, little details that you get. All of the scenes involving swimming and the kind of the ideology behind why are they swimming, what does that actually mean, and just the relationships that they have within the film, the mystery behind it, because this is also a murder mystery film, believe it or not. This film has so much that you can read into and you can go back to and watch over and over again and analyze. It's one of those films where you just sit back, take notes, and then you just go, okay, what just happened there, and then go over it again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
I was just going to add on to Tate's points, the idea that 9 times out of 10, because he swims with his brother earlier in childhood, 9 times out of 10 his brother wins, but it's about that drive and determination that perhaps the genetically altered don't have, that him being run of the mill does. So he's determined to do better than he can. And the scene I love, it's very sort of downplayed, I think, where they're doing a test on endurance, and he's on the treadmill, and the people around him are not going away so he can like catch his breath, so he has to keep going, because otherwise the main character gets found out. And I just love the tension of that scene, and you can really feel that he's really on the edge, really struggling to keep pace, or not to collapse. Fantastic.
It's a film that I've seen twice. I think both at the behest of Tayte. I think the first time you just said, watch this film. I don't know if someone lent me the film, I think. I swear. I can't remember now. But I watched it the one time, and then we watched it again for Film Club when we did it that time. I don't know. There's something that isn't grasping me about it. Now, the 2 walkaways that I can remember, I remember the swimming scene. I remember that being bookended very nicely, and I like this sort of like the visual metaphor of that moment that Tom's just brilliantly explained. And I remember thinking Jude Law is easily the best thing in this film. Uma Thurman, I didn't really care about in the film. She's just sort of, she's a bit sort of like wishy-washy in that film. And it's Ethan Hawke, right? Ethan Hawke's the main guy.
It's the film where Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman met.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, was it before or after this one?
So long now, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a film like Blade Runner, because the first time that I watched Blade Runner, I didn't care about it. I didn't really know what it was going on about, and I found it kind of boring. Then I watched it a second time, found elements about it that I enjoyed more. Third time, fourth time, and now Blade Runner is one of my favorite sci-fi films of all time. So maybe that could be the same for Gattaca. Maybe it needs a third viewing to cement it for me. As of right now, I won't say it's forgettable. I remember the scene that I just mentioned. I remember, now you mentioned the treadmill scene. I do remember that too, but something about it isn't staying with me as much as it has with you guys at the moment. So maybe it is one that I need to give a bit more attention to and go back to it a third time.
I've not seen it. It's something you guys have told me to watch loads, and I'm on that list again where I've just still not watched it. But whenever I see that like circular corridor, I don't know why there's a pull to it. I like that kind of weird set designy thing. So I will watch it one day. I just can't guarantee you when, but it is a guarantee at some point.
I feel like a watch along of all of our favorite films are due, but if I suggest that, then we have to watch Lord of the Rings extended editions on the channel, and that's just going to be too long.
in the space
all
of
three, 12-hour marathon. Let's do this.
Oh god, I didn't survive that when we did that.
You knew what you were signing up for. Like, side story, me and Tom went to a Lord of the Rings extended edition marathon at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, and you pieced out after the first film. The second film started. We were 10 minutes in, and you left. What did you think you were signing up for?
I know. I was like, it just. Also, it didn't help that it was uncomfortable cinema. The bloke in front of me had a gigantic head.
It's a weird design because the seats are like a downwards, upwards hill. It's it's a weird. It's an amazing cinema, but it was. I mean, the only film I've seen there was The Room. So I was like, first time watching it, why are 300 spoons being thrown at a screen? That was my question. But this is the thing. Like, I will go to marathon one day, but the seats were only comfy, and I watched an hour and a half long film. Yeah. And then you guys like signed up for 12 hours.
Yeah, 12 hours. It didn't hit me until I got in there that I sort of really realized, what have I got into? Like, this is going to be.
I have made a terrible mistake.
I love the extended cuts, but this is just going to be uncomfortable, and I can't bear it. So I pieced out like halfway through the second one or something like that.
Yeah.
Didn't even stay for Helm's Deep.
I know. You were out.
Yeah, I was out and I had to wait
But anyway,
about 2 hours for the train home. The first train home at 6 a.m.
Oh, oh, the memories. I never want to
back
do
on
that ever
track.
again.
Watch
Yes.
Gattaca. Watch Gattaca. George, this is for you actually. Watch Gattaca.
One day. It will happen.
done, my lord.
I need to finish watching Heat first. But,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
believe we are on to Tom's final
The
pick.
last pick.
The most controversial pick.
Yes.
I think so.
Very
I think so
controversial.
too. My final pick is another science fiction film, the 2017 version of Ghost in the Shell, with Scarlett Johansson on Amazon Prime. You can watch it. So it's okay. It's fine as a film, or especially when I first watched it. And the whitewashing issue aside, it doesn't really hold a candle to the anime back in '95. It uses some of the same elements as that, but the two films I think are separate, are distinct enough that you can separate the two. Obviously, there are similar scenes in there. They do verbatim her chasing, or Major chasing the criminal down the alley, and the fight in the background of. But I think it's better than people give it credit for. Now, the reason is because I think the way that it presents the Major as a character is better than it seems. So it's all about her chasing, instead of her sort of discovering or her humanity, it's her discovering her identity. So there's no question that she is in fact human. She's trying to find out who she was, and that leads to this unraveling of the very nature of who she is. Great, visually very good. I do think that it does sort of lose itself in the middle, but overall I think it's better than it was initially received. So it's one to go and check out to see if people feel differently about it. Because when I watched this for a second time, I definitely felt this is better than I gave it credit for the first time, and I enjoyed it the first time. But I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying it's like the best sci-fi film ever made. It's just one to consider rewatching.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed this. I think I went to see this film twice at the cinema when it came out, and I did watch the anime in lead up. I had already seen the anime before that point, but it was like a refresher before this new one was coming out to get a frame of comparison to see what they did identically, similarly, or completely different. And yeah, I'm pretty much in the same camp as you. I remember everyone just absolutely hating on this film, as they tend to do, quite rightly so most of the time with live action adaptations of animes, because they're never usually that good. But this one had good elements to it. Now, I do think that the whitewashing element was a big point against this film, and I do stand by that. I think they should have got someone of that nationality, the same character as Matako from the original. But there is a lot to like there, namely down to the visuals. I appreciated the scenes that they shot more or less identical to the original. It shows that they did have their heart in the right place. Most notably, that fight scene you mentioned in the shallow water on the outskirts of the city was done really well. I remember I think it's the opening scene of the film, this action scene with these people wearing masks, and I think the sort of like android kind of masks, if I remember rightly. I haven't seen it since it came out, so my memory is a little bit hazy on there. I remember the villain aspect not being as good, if I remember rightly, or some missed opportunities in terms of the villain.
Yeah, they do. I personally think that the villain is okay. So they both have a history, and the history relates to each other. So the Major and the villain both are related in some way, and their history is the sort of mystery that unfolds and unravels, and how they know each other. I do think you're right in some respects. There is a missed opportunity there to sort of develop that more. It does clock in at just under 2 hours. I think given a longer run time, stuff like this could have been fleshed out a lot more.
Especially with the supporting characters as well. Some of the actors they get for that should have had more to do in it, I think.
Exactly. But saying that, I do think if you give it another watch, you'll see things that you liking it more than you did, say, the first time you watched it, and definitely rewatch it again just to see if there's anything else I missed in it.
Yeah.
So I've never seen the original or the new one. I'm familiar with the criticisms of obviously Scarlett Johansson. The main thing, didn't they alter her with CGI as well to make her look more Asian? I think that was added into the mix. And
Oh, I don't know that.
It's a very fascinating read into, and certain defenses of it have been quite poor. But I'm still curious to see the original. So anime is something where I've stayed away from it because I know what I'm like. And when I do watch them, I'll probably end up going through like 7 or 8 of the main ones. I've had Akira on Blu-ray forever. There is Ghost in the Shell. I believe there's the one. There's just tons of them. What's the one? There's like a series.
Studio Ghibli ones are sort of like
There's what's the famous series called that's being made into American dramas? It's like, I can't remember.
Cowboy Bebop is being made by Netflix.
I'm trying to apologize. It won't come back to me, but it's I think it's an action one. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting though. Fair play for picking something that everyone's going to like shoot you for, because
there is.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. Like, there is something to be said, especially. I think we've all discussed this. There's at least one film where we've all watched it, hated it, and then gone back to it and really enjoyed it, or had a different perspective on it. I think for some reason, the most famous one for me is The Great Gatsby. I don't know why. The first time round, I don't know what I was expecting. Second time round, I absolutely adored it. And there's another one which I've also forgotten. I think Thor Ragnarok, another one. First time viewing that, I would not have thought that would become one of my favourite Marvel films. That was probably down more to the people at the cinema than me. But yeah, no, it's a very interesting pick.
For me, I actively avoided this film because I do quite enjoy the original. And I'm one of those fans who, if I see bad reviews for a film and I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to go and see it or not, I will just go and avoid it. I'm not going to put myself through the torture unless it gets to the stage where it's like a 1-star review, in which case, yeah, sure, I'll go watch it because that sounds funny. But I might go back and have a watch it because another film which wasn't given the best reviews when it first came out, but now picking up a bit more kind of better reviews and stuff like that, was Attila Battle Angel, which came out Alita Battle Angel, which I've heard quite interesting, good things about. And of course, Cowboy Bebop, which is one of my favorite TV series of all time, is getting made into live action Netflix. I don't know how to feel about that. So maybe I'll actually feel better off watching this film and then seeing where it kind of succeeded and where it maybe failed, going into kind of the future of more and more things being made. I'm not sure if you're thinking of Attack on Titan, George, because that's also being made.
That's the one. Attack on Titan, I recognise the name, yeah.
Because that's also being made into live action, and I'm not sure how I feel about that as well. So I think maybe with the more films that come out, it's always the case. The first few attempts at doing stuff like this, it's never going to be good, but the more and more they do it, the better it's going to get, and the more acceptable it's going to get. So maybe this film came in at the wrong time, and maybe they should have gone for not the most famous one, or I guess other than Akira, the second most famous one. But yeah, I'll give it a watch, and I'll have a think about it.
But you know, here's the thing. So you know, these remakes and things could. So the ones that do just do exactly the same thing. You know, you can go for the remake of Psycho. It's just verbatim Psycho again, and it's crap because it's, you know, just we've had it done. The ones that stand out, and I think this is on that list as well, are ones that do something different with what they with the original source material. So the one I always go to is the remake of 3:10 to Yuma, one of my favorite Western films, another Christian Bale film to watch. But it does something different with the, you know, there's the original's still there, and the original's still there for this, but it does something a lot different with its source material, and which I think the best remakes always do.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. The last thing I'll throw out there from Ghost in the Shell remake, which I remembered, was the visual design of the city, which was outstanding. The use of neon, the futuristic world, and I remember being more impressed with that. And then right after that, I think around the same time, or maybe a year later or something like that, we had Blade Runner 2049, which was almost doing exactly the same thing that I'd already seen in Ghost in the Shell when that came out. So I remember there being like a visual link there and the neon in the city. But I love the conceptual design of Ghost in the Shell. I thought it was fantastic.
Also, just quick, this also comes off the back of me playing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 at the moment. So.
Have you actually made it playable? Have you actually managed to play the damn game?
On a side note, I've gotten to the point of no return. It's borderline unplayable, but I'm enjoying it.
See, I enjoyed it from. I'm lucky I've got the PS5, so I was able to play it properly. However, then I read that it was it was corrupting save files after they grew to a certain amount of megabytes. So I'm already like 15 hours in. I'm not playing in case I'm not going to replay the first 15 hours. So I'm holding fire for a long while to go back to. But I see exactly what you mean, because I watched that and I was like, oh, maybe I should give some of this anime thing a chance. And I was like, no, sorry. One day when I came out of that thinking that I did want to play. I wanted to rewatch Blade Runner, but if I completed the game, it might be different. It made me want to watch some more Keanu Reeves, to be fair. But no, Cyberpunk aside, that's been the video. It's been all our long ones, but we're gonna very quickly have a quick run through of everything we've done. So we have, in no particular order, both on the bottom and on video, we have Kingdom of Heaven, the extended Ridley Scott version. We have Apocalypto. We have Equilibrium, Last Action Hero, The Fountain, Fever Pitch. I'm about to bring up Sexy Beast. Where's I was surprised I've lost the photo. The Way Back, Beyond the Map, Patterson, It Follows, Blue Valentine, Gattaca, Good Time, Peterloo. Oh God, another long title. The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, Galaxy Quest, Fighting My Family, Ghost in the Shell, and that has been our 20. We have picked some people at home, which we appreciate, and I think this has been a great video to do. I've rattled that list off very quickly, but we want you guys to comment with some of your recommendations. As I said, this has been one of the most varied videos we've done. Not many of us have seen many of the other picks, which is always a nice thing to add to the conversation. And that's the whole point of this video, you know. We're going to be probably in lockdown until, I'm going to say, mid-March at the absolute earliest, probably near as mid-April. But we've got a lot of films to catch up on. I've been breezing through some of them. I've caught up to a lot of awful films from last year, looking at you, the old guys. But that being said, yeah. Don't know how to round off. Tom, do talk about your blog actually first.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I started this during last lockdown back in June, July. I forget which month. But essentially, I look at or pick films and try and pick appropriate beers to drink with them. So I'll review the film on the blog and also review the beer. You can find that at www.filmsandbeer.co.uk.
I think we'll have that coming up in a second. But yeah, no, this has been an absolute blast. And to see you again, Tom, it's been a while, my friend.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really good to have you on the video today. I had a really good time with this discussion today. And obviously, we do reviews as well on the channel here. So we've got our retro reviews every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Next week on Tuesday, we have Heat coming out. And then on Fridays, we have probably locked in every Friday now for the foreseeable future with Disney Plus's WandaVision at the moment. So we're going through the Marvel shows there. But these videos are fun as well. So if you guys love the video today and you want to see more of these discussion-based ones where we'll just throw a given topic, maybe we just discuss films openly, or maybe it'll be another list video like this. If you want to see more stuff like that, do let us know, because it's great to just hang out and chat movies with you guys and just get a video out like this. Something a bit different, I guess. So that'll do it for us today. I think, have we already done socials? Have we done socials already?
We have. No, we haven't.
We haven't. So Facebook, if you want to find us, that's at Cinema Savvy. Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. And we do have a link in the description down below for TeePublic. We have 3 t-shirt designs on there. Tayte is wearing one of them right now, so please feel free to check that out. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday for our review on Heat. Take care, everyone.